Chris, if I might ask you to come to the front. We're still waiting for Commissioner Brown, but she's en route. And I think we can still get the meeting started. According to the agenda, it looks like it may be a longer meeting. Not everything can be 45 minutes in January, right? Yeah, we're paying. So the time is 7:04, and I'm going to call the March 9th meeting of the ANC 1A to order. And we start each meeting with community announcements. So if anyone in the community has something they'd like to share with those assembled, you can stand up by the microphone to my right, my left, your right. And while you are doing that, I have a few things that I would like to announce. The first one being that the surplus meeting for 3012 Georgia Avenue, otherwise known as the former Bruce Monroe School site, has been scheduled for March 21st from 6:30 to 8:30 at the Bruce Monroe at Parkview School. As I said, that's March 23rd. Comments for those who attend the meeting or are unable to attend the meeting will be accepted. Excuse me, the meeting's on the 21st. Comments are until March 23rd. And this commission probably will see that or consider that issue in April. I have one other announcement to make, and then we'll go to Commissioner Nguyen. I think it was 2 months ago, our Ward 1 school board member, Laura Wilson-Phelan, was here to talk about changes for draft draft regulations that were changing. And she asked me to remind commissioners if you had any input to email her directly so she can incorporate that. And if you would like to see me afterwards or you want a copy of the notice of proposed rulemaking, I do have a paper copy, but I can also send it out to everyone electronically. Commissioner Nguyen.
Thank you. I'm organizing my fourth Powell Playground Cleanup. It'll be on Saturday, March 19th, starting at 10 a.m. I will be providing coffee, and Parks and Rec will be providing shovels and gloves and other things necessary to clean up. And this is in sponsorship with the Mayor's Office and a few other folks. So hope to see some of you there.
Are there comments from or announcements from other commissioners? Commissioner Wedding.
I'd like to thank Commissioner Cross for his assistance in helping us put together a meeting regarding a GCA application. He did a great job, got materials together, and was very responsive to our needs. Commissioner Bishop. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wade. Are there any other?
Yes.
Commissioner Frost.
I just want to say thank you, Commissioner Wade, for your assistance, and I want to say thank you for the people who attended the meeting, and I want to say thank you for the developers for coming out, hearing the community concerns about their project.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you for waiting.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Enjoying the great weather that we're having. My name is John Mitchell, and I just want to thank Commissioner Wade for inviting me today. I came to discuss the Adopt-A-Block initiative that my chapter of Kappa Psi Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated is hosting. We have a program in conjunction with the DC Clean City Initiative, as well as with the 501c3 to clean the blocks in Columbia Heights, specifically in a 2-block radius from 1231 Harvard Street, Northwest. I just wanted to say that I would love to bring you out. I know I have a little left of time, but 501c, if you have any high school students that want to attend, we have it where we can sign them up for community service, and I know that with the DC public schools, community service is necessary for graduation. So our time will be on the 19th of March, 11 to 1 a.m., right at 1231 Harvard Street. We have another one April 23rd, and the final one August 17th. I'm out of time, but I sent a flyer to Mrs. Wade, so if she might be able to send it on the newsletter or on the listserv, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for your time. Have a great evening. Enjoy the weather.
Don't go away.
Oh, okay.
I have two questions.
Yes.
Perhaps I missed it, but
Yes.
I didn't catch your name.
Yes, John Mitchell.
John Mitchell.
Yes.
Okay, and then the other thing is, you mentioned that you gave Ms. Wade a flyer. Do you have flyers in back, or if someone's interested in this?
Yeah, we do not have any more right now, so I'm trying to get some more printed out by Saturday. Well, I'll be in the area.
Okay, I'm just asking, so if people are interested, I want to know how
Yes.
to get in touch with you.
Definitely. Okay, well, I sent Mrs. Wade my information, so I was hoping that if you all have a listserv, you could send it through that, and contact me, never hesitate. I can fill you in with a lot more with the necessary time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Hugo Mogon. I am the director of Community Food Works. We are the organization that manages the Columbia Heights Farmers Market. I decided to come tonight just to respectfully request letter of support for the market for this year. The Commission's been a great supporter of the market, and I just wanted to share like a very quick report of what the market did this year. Basically, we have injected almost $91,000 this year in benefits into the community, and I feel like the market is a tremendous benefit for the community and the local businesses. 56 local businesses have been at the farmers market, and people that sell like from crafts to prepare food, and we are just really grateful with the commission, and we would like to keep contact with your support this year. If I have my business card, I'm going to leave it on the table, and if somebody needs to know more about the market, I'll be happy to provide more information. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Wade? No. Okay.
My question is that I know that the businesses up there where the market is in its are now going to have more outdoor seating for current businesses. How's that going to impact on the number of businesses you have up there, the space available, and the overall congestion?
Yeah, that's a problem we're aware of, and we have like the intention of just like have a collaboration with these businesses and see if we could like coexist and at the market hours. Frozen just been there for many years, and they've been like just like kind enough to let us work in the market hours and just without feeling that impact in their businesses. We are already talking with and Pizza to see how we could work together. The market is going to be open on Wednesdays from 4 to 7:30, and we would love just to keep counting with the same space. We also are respectful of the private property there, but we just want to be sure that also there's enough space for the people to shop and walk around. We know that the market brings a lot of traffic to the plaza, and the businesses that are around the plaza just have a great benefit from the market. So I feel like it's also in the interest of the businesses that the market is there, and I know that we would find common ground just to coexist. And I feel like we are all about like building partnerships, and we expect to come with the same support.
Okay, it's very dicey up there on that corner sometimes, all that traffic, all the people. I'm just concerned about having enough space for the buying public in that space.
Yes, we're concerned.
So we're going to take up a large portion of the outdoor space.
Yeah, we're concerned about that, and that's what I'm saying. I feel like for that day, we'll try to compromise. We expect also NPs to compromise in that way. The market doesn't go
like all the way to the walls. As I'm saying, I feel it's important that we keep the right of way for the foot traffic, and we want to be conscious. I feel like and pizza will be open to talk, and I feel like also the commission has is concerned about it, and if the community is open for that, I just expect that we can find a solution for this. Yeah, thank you. The market is, I think it's very good. Thank you.
Do we have any committee reports? Okay. Then moving on to presentations, council members. I understand there's some discussion as to who's first on the agenda. I don't know. We have it listed with Councilmember Nato first and Silverman second, but I'm amenable to changing that order. It's up to you.
We will proceed with the original order.
All right, then Councilmember Nato, you have the floor.
Commissioners, it's wonderful to be here with you tonight. I thank you for the opportunity to address you, community. Also great to see you all. I try to visit each ANC quarterly, so it's your turn. I hope that's a good thing. You can tell me afterwards. As you know, I'm your Ward 1 council member, and I have been in this job for just over a year now. And in the past year, I've been working very hard to address the issues that you've raised with us, as well as all of those that we've heard from the community. In fact, we have our Ward 1 annual report in the back of the room. That's our status report on all that we've accomplished in the past year. If you didn't get one in the mail, I hope you'll grab one on the way out or take one to your neighbor. I want to give you a few highlights. Of course, I'm still focused on the same priorities that we all care about, affordable housing, ethics and government accountability, supporting our schools, our families, and our workers, and of course, addressing public safety. It's oversight season at the council, which means we spend sometimes up to 12 hours a day in hearing from our government agencies and making sure that we're asking them the questions that we're hearing from the public, but also the ones that we have in our minds, working with all of them. So if you have questions for any specific agencies, you can always feel free to send them to me via email. Even though we are now about halfway through the performance oversight hearings, the budget oversight hearings start up in April. So we get 2 rounds of this. And it's actually quite fun for nerds like me, and might I say Councilmember Silverman as well, because we really do get to dig in on all these good government issues and make sure that all the agencies are living up to the promises that the mayor has made on their behalf. I'm a member of the committee that oversees both DCRA and ABRA, and I mention that here because those are issues that I know the ANC deals with on a regular basis. I recall it from my days on the ANC, and I wanted to let you know that we did have those hearings just recently, and I spent some time holding DCRA's feet to the fire. Chairman Bass, we appreciated your testimony in particular, and certainly I think between my questions and your testimony, we were able to convey the increased need for transparency and predictability and responsiveness from that agency, and also really common sense interpretation of the zoning code. So we're continuing to push on those issues. We had the zoning commission and the Office of Planning right up after that, so I got to continue with that line of questioning. And with regard to schools, first of all, I'm very glad to be standing on the brand new floor in Tubman's Elementary, because it actually took a lot longer than it should have to get this floor done, but we've been working on that for at least a year. And really just working to hold DCPS accountable. One of the major roles I've played is regarding the school modernizations and facilities. And so that includes not only bringing Tubman parents together with DCPS to set a vision for the upcoming few years and address the influx of new students at the school. It also means focusing on our Bruceman Road Parkview School, which last year was able to secure $5.77 million for, and now we're pushing to finish that modernization, and really just making sure that all of our schools are fully funded at the levels that they need so that our children can have wonderful modern schools that are pleasant learning environments. As I mentioned, affordable housing is still a major issue that I'm working on. I I may have mentioned last time I was here that we have preserved 64 units of affordable housing in Columbia Heights, run by Jubilee. I thank my colleague Alyssa Silverman for voting in support of that as well. And we also recently just approved legislation that will develop 128 affordable units on Florida Avenue, just outside your boundaries, but still within the scope of importance in terms of preserving affordable housing. And of course, you probably saw in the council budget last year, and we're going to fight again this year, to fully fund the Housing Production Trust Fund at $100 million, which is the fund that helps us produce affordable housing and preserve it. I have co-introduced a bill that would increase down payment assistance for new home buyers, something you all know is dear to my heart because I got to participate in one of those programs when I purchased my first home. I'm also a big supporter of the paid family leave bill before the council, and I know my colleague will speak more on this because it's actually her bill, but providing 12 weeks of paid leave to workers when they need to care for a family member or for themselves in the face of a serious health condition or other major life event. We started with 16, we may end up at 12. That's where the negotiation is right now, but really I think this legislation is about our values as a community. And we really shouldn't be asking people to experience the joy of a new child or the devastation of a serious illness while also being really worried about how they're going to make ends meet during that period of time where they need to take a little time off. Also, as I know, this is an important issue for this area in ANC 1A, focusing on making our neighborhoods safe. And Elizabeth on my team is over there. She's at your meeting every month, but she works very closely with me and MPD to make sure MPD has the resources they need. And we've been bridging the gap between residents and MPD and doing public safety walks. We did 6 last summer, and we're about to get into that season again, so we'll keep you posted. Just a couple weeks ago, we passed a crime bill in the council. And that is a comprehensive bill. It's a data-driven approach. You guys know that I always like to be about using data to inform our work, so we do it right. And it's really going to get at some of the recurring issues that we see. We also passed emergency legislation that's going to help the Attorney General better address the surge in synthetic drug use in our community. We know that's a big issue in Columbia Heights, and we've been monitoring it closely, but also want to make sure that all of our law enforcement agencies have the tools they need to address it, because it's ever-changing, and we have to be nimble. And so that's what we try to do with this legislation. We also moved the camera rebate forward. It was stuck in some administrative red tape, and so we passed some additional legislation to get that done. So people who live in PSAs 302 or 409 within ANC 1A will be eligible for a rebate now, and everyone else will be eligible starting in August. Those were 2 of the 4 precincts in Ward 1 that were targeted because of their high crime rates. Once again, trying to use data to be smarter about how we spend our tax dollars, which I know you all appreciate as taxpayers. I also introduced 2 new bills last week. The first would give the Attorney General and the Office of the Tenant Advocate new powers to hold landlords accountable when they do something that causes tenants to be relocated. So if they're in violation of a code and that causes a fire, now we would be able to actually put a lien on their property and use that money to pay to relocate folks. Right now, when something like that happens, we have a fund that we use to support families as they're being relocated and displaced, and that fund runs down very quickly. And so what this does is create a new source of funds by penalizing negligent landlords, and allows the other pool of money to be available throughout the year for people who experience a natural disaster or some other act of God that you can't blame on a negligent landlord. So really this makes the pool and the pot deeper. It gives the Office of the Tenant Advocate and the Attorney General more teeth in what they're doing to protect tenants, and I'm very proud of that. The second bill actually establishes a street harassment task force. Many of you probably tuned in to our roundtable in December, where many residents of Ward 1 and I as well shared our experiences out in public being harassed on the street, and it was very moving. And it led us to create a task force that's going to address the issue through training, policy changes, and education. And, we seek to actually change behavior. We don't seek to lock people up, but rather to teach them why that type of behavior in public space is not appropriate, and also teach bystanders how to assist people that are being harassed. We've seen a very successful campaign on Metro, and so we want to expand that to all of our public spaces. And that's just a little bit of what we've been up to. I wanted to bring a little bit of a report, and I know that there may be some questions, so I want to reserve some time for that. And I really want to thank you all for your leadership, and welcome Commissioner DeBester to his new role. And it's nice to see some real continuity of leadership in our officers, and I truly thank you. Each of you has served as a partner to us in the Ward 1 Council office as we've done our work, and I truly appreciate the divide and conquer. Thank you.
Thank you, council member. Don't go anywhere. I'm just kind of curious. I know I have a few questions. Do other commissioners have questions? So I'll go right into it. Well, they may or may not be formulating theirs. I would be remiss if I did not comment on your school modernization. I know that you have been working hard to modernize Bridgeville and Parkview. But that said, the 5.77 might only do the cafeteria. So the things I need you to think about, because you can rest assured that you're going to see me come budget oversight on a couple of things. So I hope you like seeing this face, because it's going to be there. What we've gotten ourselves into is that school started, as you know, with a phased modernization. And as a result, because we don't do phased modernizations anymore, that community has been shafted because they are now low man on the totem pole, where other schools are getting total modernizations. So I need to see what we can do to partner to get this done. I mean, done. I appreciate the new cafeteria this year, fingers crossed. I appreciate that we were able to get an elevator when we had an ADA issue. But doing it piecemeal is a waste of time, energy, and money. It's not the most cost-effective way we can go. So we need to finish that. What I would like, you don't have to answer it tonight, but what I would like to know is, of all the Ward 1 schools, which ones, I mean, is this school the only one that's currently not in some kind of modernization strategy? I know Marie Reed is going on. I know other schools have been completed or that they're ongoing with being plans. Is this the outlier? And then to fold that in, the one thing that's difficult with schools is you can't think about it from a ward perspective, because school boundaries don't align with ward boundaries. So we also have Raymond in Ward 4, which serves a good chunk of Columbia Heights. And so I know that's a lot to think about, but if you really, truly, comprehensively want to improve our schools for the citizens, you have to think differently than one school at a time. So the other thing I'd like to bring up, since you brought up the Office of the Attorney General, I'm not satisfied with how we have plainclothes police officers deployed these days. And while many people may not see that change as something all that different, I know others would say that it's been drastic. One example where it has really negatively impacted the community is with nuisance properties, where you have a property that may be empty and may be used by a drug dealer. In talking to the Office of the Attorney General, they've said it's much harder to collect the evidence they need to get a good case to shut those properties down than it used to be. And those are the properties specifically that we should be really concerned with. We had one on Park Road that fortunately was closed down. I know that there's one right now on Rock Creek Church Road that's right across from the daycare. I know that there are others by the DC USA area that the Attorney General is working on. But if we want to get on top of these, they need all the resources and tools possible to make sure that these don't escalate into violent parts of our neighborhood, especially as we're going into warmer months. And then one thing I'll mention in passing, since it's oversight season, and the DDOT's probably passed. But I'm disturbed that recently every outreach to DDOT for assistance Mind you, if it's a 311 request, I'm going to use 311. If I'm reaching out to them, it's probably because I don't think it's a 311 request. And yet I'm getting pushback that they want a 311 number, they want a ticket number for everything I bring to their attention. And then today, when I brought to their attention that the streetlights are out on LaRae Place, every streetlight is out on LaRae Place. It has been for 3 days. There's construction, somebody probably cut something they shouldn't have, and yet when I got the response back, it was that, well, it usually takes 3 days for a normal notice, and I'm like, this isn't normal. So, you know, I'm a little confused with an entrenchment in bureaucracy rather than focusing on getting it done. So those are comments to make that.
So, thank you for those. Those were very helpful. Of course, with Bruce Monroe, you know that I've been in the trenches on that since before I was on the council, and we are committed to getting the job done. And one of where we are right now that DCPS has told us that wasn't enough money, thank you very much, is getting them to tell us how much will be enough, so we can bring all the resources to the table. One of the things that we try to do in my office is be creative about our thought, not just in budget season, but all year round. So thinking about projects going on simultaneously in which we can leverage resources, federal block grants, those sorts of things. In fact, that sort of creative thinking brought a grant from the River Smart program. So we're going to keep doing that. Your comment on the ward boundaries is not lost on me. In fact, I do a lot of work on Garrison Elementary, which is across the street from Ward 1, and I'm more than happy to engage on Raymond, and I think that's a really good suggestion. And I'll touch base with Council Member Todd on that, so he knows that I'm about to get up in there. And then, you know, I think Tubman is also an example of a school that hasn't had a full modernization. I think it's a little different in this case because we're looking at a surge in population that might require like an addition or something else. So we have to think that through a little carefully, but that's actually the process that we're going through right now with the parents. But Bruce Monroe at Parkview is one of the last. Not the last, but it's worth noting. I mean, frankly, I can't tell you how happy I will be when we are done with school modernizations, because you would believe, but most people wouldn't believe how much time that I spend in meetings about school modernization, and that's because we want to get it right. And for so many years before I was in this seat, we didn't. So I'm with you, and I really appreciate your partnership, because I think 2 loud voices are better than 1. And especially when they're duly elected, because then they have to listen, right? That's the theory anyway. I appreciate the thoughts on the OAG, and I will touch base with him to see what it is he thinks he needs, so we can figure that out. Because I agree with you, when you say nuisance, I assume you mean houses that are being used for drug sales and whatnot, and that's obviously not behavior that we want to support in the ward. And then finally, there was a staffing change in DDOT, and we're settling into that, and we're not sure we like it yet. And we actually just were notified today about that outage on LaRae, so I'm troubled that you had already flagged it for them and they still haven't done anything about it. So we will, Elizabeth was working on that this afternoon, so we will try and expedite it. I had the same thought when I was told that all the lights were out, that this is obviously not a bulb. So they need to actually do an investigation and figure out, hopefully it's not like a rewire, it's just something they can reignite, but yeah. So we're monitoring the DDOT thing, and one of the things that I'm asking Elizabeth to do as I stand here at the mic also is to make sure that new staff at DDOT understands that when an ANC is contacting them, that they may have a reason not to have a reference number, despite the fact that we all prefer to use 311. Our office uses 311 also. So
let me just say with 311, I still, to this day, and I know Gabriela Rojo, I think, is here, I find it frustrating to use in its newest iteration, or most recent iteration, because it has required fields that aren't relevant to many of the requests. For instance, if you're reporting graffiti that's on a mailbox and sitting on a sidewalk, it asks you if it's on the first floor or second floor, and you cannot not answer that question. It's irrelevant. So the system isn't working. If nothing else, it should at least include the category of other for everything where it's requiring an answer. It's
That's great. That's really helpful. We provide regular feedback on 311 to the city administrator. I noticed Councilmember Allen also asked some very pointed questions about that in oversight hearings, and that was helpful also because it was one I couldn't get to. But I think we're all on team make 311 work better because we want everyone to use it. So keep sending those productive pieces of feedback our way because we'll keep sending them to the right people.
Are there questions from other commissioners? Are there any questions from members of the community? All right.
We've bored them.
I think it's warm in here.
It is.
So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Please stay
Thank
as
you,
long as you
community.
like. Maybe you'll hear something when we listen to Councilmember Silverman.
Very good.
Would I break protocol if I took more of a talk show host approach here? Okay.
Depends on the talk show.
Very good point. Well, good evening, commissioners, and good evening, Ward 1 residents. I'm Alyssa Silverman. I'm an at-large member. I was elected along with Councilmember Nadeau in November 2014, and it's my privilege to serve you. And it certainly has been quite an experience for the past 14 months or so. Councilmember Nadeau has been a great partner in my work on the council. I want to thank her. She gave a very comprehensive update on the council goings-on. I'm going to zero in on a few bills that Councilmember Nadeau, in fact, has been a terrific partner with, and then I'll leave time for questions. First, I do want to reiterate something that Councilmember Nadeau said. It is oversight season, and this is the chance for both commissioners and for the community to speak to council members as well as the executive about the performance of our city agencies. And I do want to commend Commissioner Bass and Mike Silver, who is a resident who came to testify, both on DCRA. And it was just both very helpful testimony. So I just want to once again say thank you for participating in our government. You help make it better. And as Councilmember Nadeau said, you know, if you're fretting that you missed the opportunity to talk about DDOT, which is a perfect thing to come to an oversight hearing on, or DCRA or DCPS, for example, you have a second bite at the apple. As Councilmember Nadeau said, we actually are almost complete our performance oversight hearings, but then we move into budget oversight, and for all intents and purposes, you can give the same testimony of both. So I look forward to seeing you there. So the three things I wanted to talk about tonight are actually, the first is DCRA related. It's about vacant properties. And this is an issue all over the city that really detracts from, I think, the health and welfare of our communities to have vacant properties next to them. So I've introduced two bills. I think Councilmember Nadeau has been a co-introducer on both. And what they're designed to do is basically put vacant properties back into use, which benefits our city, benefits our communities, benefits our tax base. So the first bill, make sure I have the details right. So the first bill we did, and this has been a two-step process, is basically we had a crazy system when we dealt with vacant properties in our city, which is that there are about 1,300 vacant properties on the vacant list. And why is it a big deal to be on the vacant list? Well, because we tax those properties at a higher rate, and it's a behavioral economics issue that if we tax you higher, hopefully that's a disincentive to hang on to that property. But it hasn't been quite a disincentive because of the way that we have enforced this law. First of all, the way we still go about it is every 6 months, DCRA has to use their resources to recertify a property as vacant. I just think that's crazy. If a property's vacant, then it should be the owner's responsibility to say, you know what, I did things that would remove it from the vacant property list. Either I'm selling the property, I've improved the property, and there are various things that would remove you from the list. So the first bill that I introduced does that. It says the onus shouldn't be on the city to keep saying, yes, it's vacant, yes, it's vacant, yes, it's vacant, because we can use those resources to police illegal construction and other things that are important to the health and safety of our residents. So this bill says, instead of DCRA doing it, the owner has to say, I have met this criteria, so I can be removed from the vacant list. So that's bill number 1. Bill number 2 closes some of the loopholes to exemptions to our vacant property law. It does 3 big things. It reduces the maximum amount of time a vacant property can qualify for tax exemptions, closes a loophole that allows continuous renewal of construction permits to qualify for tax exemptions. That's been a major loophole, so people keep pulling permits, but then nothing happens. And the third big thing it does is it instructs DCRA to investigate properties with very low water usage to see if they're vacant. So basically, if we see that there's very little water going into property, we know somebody's not living there. And that can be an indicator of vacancy. So these 2 bills are actually in a committee that both Councilmember Nadeau and I sit on. I'm hoping that there is actually a very positive response to these bills in our oversight hearing. The director of DCRA is very supportive of the first one, and I think we are winning her over on the second one. So that is the first bill. The second bill is one that Councilmember Nadeau mentioned. It has been one of the big pushes of my office this year, and this is about paid family leave. How many people know anything about the paid family leave bill? Okay, terrific. Okay, so we have some work to do here. So let me ask this. How many people have had a child welcomed into their family? Parents? Okay. How many people have had a parent who's gotten ill and they've had to take time off work to care for that parent? Keep your hands up for all the categories. And how many people have had to take off work because of a severe illness that they've had? Okay, all right, well, a fair number of hands have gone up. So that's exactly what this bill is designed to do. So we are the only country really in the industrialized world that doesn't have a paid family leave policy. And what paid family leave is designed to do is when you have either a happy moment, like welcoming a child into your home, whether it be a birth of a child or adoption of a child, or taking care of a parent, in the last days of their life. That you don't have to make the heartbreaking decision whether to, take care of that important medical or family need or go to work. And a lot of people face that decision every day. So what Councilmember Nadeau gave some of the details. We introduced a bill that would offer 16 weeks of paid leave to people who both work and live in the district. It has had 3 hearings. After the second hearing, Chairman Mendelson introduced what he called a discussion draft of the bill to talk about some of the pressure points, let's say, in the bill. Obviously, there are 3 big things. How much leave would be granted, what would be the replacement wage rate, so what kind of benefit you would receive, and who would be eligible, what would be the universe of people. I don't have to tell this audience that we are a unique jurisdiction. I was just meeting with a council member today from Seattle, Washington, and who didn't realize that we can't tax commuters. So that is a bit of a complication of this bill. I'm happy to get into the details maybe in the question and answer period, but where we are is we have completed the 3rd hearing. We're waiting for the Chairman Mendelson, who is sort of the manager of the bill at this point, to give, to present what will be the actual bill that he'll present for the council to vote on. So we're hoping that's going to happen in the next few weeks. And I want to thank Councilmember Nadeau for her support. She has been a great supporter of this. The third bill I want to talk about gets a little bit at the issue you were talking about, Commissioner Bass, about school modernization in a weird way, which is how many people know that we are building a practice facility for the Washington Wizards? Okay, and does anyone know how much we're spending on it? Okay, well, I like this gentleman right there. So we are spending $50 million of our capital dollars, which are dollars that could go, for example, to school modernization or DDOT for street repair on the Washington Wizards practice facility. So this is a, all the NBA teams now demand to have practice facilities for their players. Ours is unique in some ways because it's all public dollars right now that are going into it. It is being built in Ward 8, or proposed to be built on the St. Elizabeth's campus. Probably people know that from John Hinckley. But in Ward 8, certainly an area of our city that is not seeing some of the commercial real estate renaissance that Ward 1 has, to be honest. It's in desperate need of commercial development there. But my point about this is unfortunately I have issues with whether this might be a good use of our tax dollars, but my issue is that we budget for it. And so if we're going to spend $50 million, let's spend $50 million and not a penny more. Because we have other pressing needs, like schools, like fire trucks, like ambulances, that we need to put our capital dollars toward. So I introduced a bill actually last week. Was it only last week? It seems like a month ago. But last week, Councilmember Nadeau was a co-introducer. I want to thank her for that again, to say, let's both have sort of efficiency and transparency when we make expenditures like this. So if we think it costs $50 million, if we say it costs $50 million, let's make sure that's all we're spending, because our money doesn't grow on trees. We have urgent needs in our city, and we can't have cost overruns that are unknown. The cost can't balloon. We've had a lot of capital projects in our city. I can name a few. You can probably name a few that ended up costing a lot more than we thought, and a lot of it was because we didn't do good oversight and we didn't have transparency about the costs. So that bill is going to have a hearing, and if this is something you're concerned about, if you're concerned about how we spend our tax dollars on capital projects, I really would encourage you to attend. It's going to be March 24th at the Wilson Building. If you can't attend, I'd love for you to submit testimony, even if you're for it, if you're for or against it. And I'll just bring up Commissioner Bass and Mr. Silver's appearances. They make a difference. I know a lot of people think their voice doesn't make a difference, but it really does. So with that, I'm happy to take questions.
All right. Are there any questions from commissioners? Then we'll open it up to any questions there may be from the community. Yes, Patrick, sure. Could you make sure that we can hear you as well?
I'm going to give you the microphone.
How does the city determine now that a house is vacant?
How does the city now determine it? So DCRA has criteria that they use. And DCRA inspect. First of all, you have to call. So you would call DCRA and say, I believe there's a vacant property, and then DCRA would come and they have a list of criteria that would meet the vacant property criteria. So they make the determination.
So the green stickers that they're going around sticking on houses that are vacant is from DCRA? And what's been put in place that can control that? I know for a fact they put those things on houses that are not vacant. And there's no way that I know of to call the city and say, you did a mistake.
Or you can contact my office, frankly, and we'll get it.
Okay, and then my second question is in relation to the last bill that you just said. What is going to be the takeaway from that for the citizens? How are we going to be able to know that what your bill is doing is actually happening?
Oh, well, that's an excellent question. So that's the point of the bill, really, is what I want to do is have Events DC, which is, so we have a sports and convention authority. and they are managing this contract. I want to have them outline exactly what the costs are, so that, and perhaps put reporting requirements in so that we can monitor spending and make sure that they're spending exactly what we've allocated. And if they don't, if there are cost overruns, I mean, there might be, part of the hearing, the point of the hearing is going to be to determine what those risks are. What are the risks of the cost overruns, and is there any way we can get in front of them? And then, if there are overruns, then I don't think that we should pay for them. Now, that's going to be part of the discussion at the hearing, but currently in our bill, if the cost exceeded $50 million, Monumental Sports, which is the owner of the Wizards, Ted Leonsis, or another private entity, perhaps, would pay those cost overruns.
So your bill is talking about only sports-related outlays of capital improvements, not things like the housing, the new thing that the mayor just specifically got.
It is talking specifically about this project, but I want to use it as an example of how we need to track our dollars better. You know, I mean, I'll bring it up. School modernization, part of the reason why we have to push back modernizations is our modernizations have cost a lot more than we initially budgeted for. And, you know, I think people might know there's been an auditor's report looking at these cost overruns. We haven't been able to monitor our spending well. Streetcar, so I live in Ward 6. I'm an at-large member. I'm not sure that was mentioned, actually. So I'm at-large. I represent the entire city, but I live in Ward 6 near the streetcar. You know, I actually think the streetcar was a well-intentioned project. It did bring development, but at a ridiculous cost and at an obscene cost. You know, once again, we didn't keep track of the spending and the contractors working on these projects. So just this is a long-winded way of saying I want to use this Wizards project as a way to start holding the line and saying, you know, we need to be more frugal with our spending, because, you know, we have ambulances that, you know, the chief claims are being held together with like scotch tape and bubble gum. I mean, that's unacceptable for our city. And I think, you know, it takes a personal spending approach. You know, we all in this room have to keep track of our dollars, because if we overspend on something, that means we don't have money for something else. And, you know, we've seen that in our government, and I think part of the solution is more transparency in how much things cost, and then better oversight of the spending. So.
Okay, thank you. And I think we have one more question from Commissioner Frost.
Good evening, Councilmember Silverman. I want to ask you, as far as this Wizards project, what benefits is this going to have to DC residents? And I ask that because DC is going to fit the appropriation of building a facility, but to my understanding, the Wizards have their own source of revenue and they're able to build their own facility. So why is the city funding organizations that have their own revenue to build their own facilities?
Commissioner Frost, I really hope you attend the March 24th hearing and ask that question. But I'll answer you in all honesty. So the city, you know, and the mayor who's proposed this sees this as an economic catalyst for Ward 8, for an area of the city. And in case you're not familiar, we're talking about the St. Elizabeth's campus. It's right next to a metro station, the Congress Heights Metro. But, you know, this is an area of the city that has just struggled to attract private development. So the idea here, there's a housing, so St. Elizabeth's, which was our, you know, formerly a mental health institution, is now that it's closed down, it's now been transferred, the land has been transferred to the city, and we are putting mixed income housing there. But the idea for the Wizards facility is that it would be an attraction. It also would be the home of the Mystics, the WNBA team. They would play 19 games a year there, and it'd also be a concert venue. A 5,000-seat concert venue. So the idea is that people would travel either to see a Mystics game or to go to a concert perhaps, and they would, it would generate sort of jobs. I think that's, and the other thing is that NBA owners are just demanding that cities build these things. Now, I have looked at other cities. I mean, we're not unique, so in that, you know, I think Philadelphia, Los Angeles, Chicago have built facilities, but I think only one of those cities has put all public dollars in. The other cities have had a mix of, you know, the teams putting in money. Some of them have given naming rights, you know, so it's like the Gatorade practice facility, and companies spend money to have their name on, just like we have the Verizon Center, for example. But I think only Philly is the other city that has put all public dollars into it. Now, you know, my concern, I do have a concern whether this is a good use of $50 million to generate economic development in Ward 8, which I think is your question. What would be the public benefits for the practice facility? There will not be public access to the Wizards practice gym. So the public access would be the Mystics games, concerts, and then Events DC. The Sports and Entertainment Commission has promised vague promises of community benefits. But once again, I think part of the dilemma we are put in on as council members is this is a contract between the city and the Wizards and our Sports and Entertainment Commission, and Councilmember Nadeau and I don't have the ability to negotiate the contract. We don't have the ability to say, well, you know what, can residents across the city use the gym to hold, you know, high school games, or to have summer camps, or all kinds of things. We can either vote up or down on the contract. And one of the things I think I failed to mention is that actually Councilmember Nadeau, along with Councilmembers Che and Grasso and I, put in a resolution that actually extended our time to review the contract so we can have this hearing. But that's exactly, I mean, you have a great question, Commissioner. I mean, in the end, we have to make sure, we're investing in the Wizards, right? I mean, that's what we're doing. We're investing in this team. And I think whenever you invest in something, you have to see a return on that investment. Now, we know what the return for the practice facility is going to be for the Wizards. Like John Wall is going to be able to jump half an inch higher because he's got a hydrotherapy pool, or, you know, all the other bells and whistles we put into these things. What is going to be the benefit for the city is what I hear your question is. And I think that's an excellent question. I think one that we want to get more answers for.
Okay, I will entertain one final question. Well, we'll go to the email in gray. It is gray, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It might be green, mint.
So my question is continuing this discussion.
Oh, great.
I'm sorry.
I'll come over to you. I'm going to date myself by saying Phil Donahue. But,
Thank you. So my question, and follow-up and continuing this discussion is, why would a council member vote yes on this? And the second question is, when you say the city, because you said it's between different folks negotiating, who is the city? Is that then the mayor? Because you said the council members are not able to negotiate.
Okay, that's a good, I didn't want to get into the weeds, but I will, since you asked a great question.
Although I will say, if you can be succinct in
I will be succinct in the weeds. So the $50 million comes from two sources, $23 million from city funds, once again, these capital funds that we allocated to St. Elizabeth's, and $27 million from the Events DC, the Sports and Entertainment Commission, which is DC taxpayer funds through the hotel tax. Why would someone vote yes? Because we desperately need development in Ward 8, and it's a hope and a prayer approach, in my opinion, that this is going to bring, you know, jobs and economic development to Ward 8. That's the quick answer. And I'm happy to talk offline with you because I know time is short further. But good question.
But then I did see two other hands. If it's burning, please ask it. Sure.
This would be my next career.
Very quick question. Is the transparency that you're proposing to the public, to council members, and in what meeting will that transparency be available?
Excellent question. The transparency would be both. You know, one problem with Nats Park, for example, we are still debating whether that was a cost overrun or not. It started, some of you might remember, as $460 million, and in fact, I'm not really sure what the total was in the end. So that's something I like, us to discuss at the hearing. If you'd like to come, I'd love to hear you, because I think it should be transparent to the public. It's your taxpayer dollars we're spending, so you should know how your dollars are being spent.
Okay, and don't leave, because I think there was one final question.
Yeah,
in the back.
stay here.
Thank you. I wanted to switch gears back to the Paid Leave Act and just say thank you so much for sponsoring the legislation, and thank you, Council Member, for supporting it. And just I wanted to urge you to both continue working on that issue throughout this session and however long it takes to continue to move that through the process. And I wanted to ask what you sort of think the chances are and what the reaction from the mayor has been to this proposal and other members on the council.
So I think the chances look really good. We just have to hold strong. Councilmember Nadeau, we had 7 co-introducers, and Chairman Mendelson has signaled that he wants a bill passed this year. So in terms of Mayor Bowser, she has said that she supports the concept. She's concerned about the cost because there will be a fiscal impact on, sorry about that, Commissioner, a fiscal impact on the city, and she wants to know what the cost is. We all want to know what the cost is. So we are, that is what we are working on right now, is making sure that this bill is we're going to bring in enough revenue from the tax that we have proposed so that it will pay for all the benefits. And that's what we're working out right now. But I'm very optimistic it's going to pass, and I really thank my colleagues for their support.
Okay, and I believe Commissioner Wade had a comment, so I'll give her the last word, and then we'll move on.
Okay.
Yes, I just wanted to speak to the investment out in Ward 8 and the economic development benefits that would actually come to the community. I can remember a couple of decades ago, actually, when the then Mayor Barry wanted to put the lottery headquarters out on Good Hope Road and Martin Luther King Avenue, and there was such a huge uproar. And we spent a lot of money to renovate that building to make it a beautiful place for players, citizens, and winners to come. That was a dead street, totally dead. But with hard work and consistency, that area is now thriving on a small community. It is the gateway to Anacostia, actually. And so even though at the time when you're making the initial investment, it doesn't seem like it's going to have benefits. All of those little shopkeepers up and down Martin Luther King Avenue and Good Hope Road now, I think they would beg to differ with you. And so I think the plan is to have St. Elizabeth anchor the other end of Martin Luther King Avenue at Alabama. So at Alabama, and that development would then make those businesses over there thrive. So I'm just saying, I know that initially it doesn't look like it's going to be a big benefit, but over a period of time when that neighborhood is then stabilized, you will see a major difference, and you will be glad that we made that initial investment. But we do want to keep their feet to the fire and prevent cost overruns. And I think we should also, while the Sports Authority is asking for stuff from us, we must always insist on community benefits from the Mystics, from the Wizards, from whatever else entity that will come out there, because the stars have to come out there to use the facility. So that's going to bring people out there just so maybe they can get a glimpse or get an opportunity to meet with them. So.
Well, thank you, Commissioner, and yeah, I just want to make clear that this bill does not kill the deal, so to speak. It's really about addressing the cost overruns and making sure that we, keep to our budget. And I'm optimistic that you'll be right. I'll just point out that, like Kettler Arena, I don't know if anyone ever is a Caps fan in this audience. They built their arena on top of the Boston Mall. on the orange line, and it hasn't had the economic impact. And in fact, they're blowing up the Balsam Mall and like redoing the whole thing because it hasn't had that kind of spillover effect. So, you know, I'll be optimistic that you're right, but let's at least keep track of our pennies so that we can put the dollars beyond 50 million into schools and you know, other things that are equally as urgent and important to us. And thank you all so much. I think I went over time, so I appreciate your indulgence, and happy to address any questions offline.
Okay, thank you for coming, Councilmember Silverman, Councilmember Nadeau. You're always welcome back. Just let us know when. And with that, we will move on to administrative matters. Commissioner Brown, do you mind taking the roll call?
Commissioner, I am so sorry. So, if anyone, I meant to say that we have.
You know I liked you before tonight. Just kidding.
We have handouts. Ashley Fox on my staff is here. If you're interested in the bills, Ashley and I will be in the back, and we have handouts on all 3 bills that we talked about.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown.
Roll call. Marvin Johnson.
Here.
Matthew Goldschmidt.
Here.
Darwin Frost.
Here.
Rashida Brown here. Josue Samaran. Absent. Tu Wen.
Here?
Kent Bass.
Present.
Dottie Love Wade. Tom Gordon.
Present.
Richard DeBuster. Bobby Holmes. Margaret Hunley. Chairman Bass, we have a quorum.
Fantastic. The next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Please look at the agenda before you and let me know if there's anything that needs to be removed, if there's anything that needs to be added, or if there's anything that needs to be put in a different place. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda, or are they still looking at it? Yes, Commissioner Holmes. Which one? No, it is. It should be the second one on the second page, the disposition of square. That is square 2892, lot 105. Yeah, that's it. Thank you for checking. Commissioner Wade, are you good?
Yes.
You will? Okay, so then, without objection, I would move to approve the agenda as set. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the budget amendment. Commissioner Goldschmidt, you might walk us through that.
So in its wisdom, the auditor changed the line items in the middle of our fiscal year, and it requires a budget amendment so that we can take many line items and put them into very few. Because there are so few, I expect this will be the one and only budget amendment of the year. It's relatively self-explanatory. It's under tab 1 on your binders. Let me know if you have any questions.
So,
Commissioner Wade?
yeah, so basically, this is the same budget, just re-pocket.
The word I would use is zhuzhed.
So we're not doing anything with the budget other than putting it into the new category that we're ready to do. And so when we get held up, we can order it because they changed and didn't tell themselves. Thank you.
Okay. Then, are there any other questions? If not, is there a motion?
I move that we accept the budget.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. The next item on the agenda, we have a vacancy on the Economic Development Committee as the position of chair. I understand Commissioner Dubester is interested, so I guess I'd be happy to nominate you for that position. Is anyone else interested in stepping up as chair of Economic Development? Okay, well, sorry for the anticlimactic, but I will declare you chair by acclamation.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dubester, for stepping up. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. That includes approval of the prior minutes, two letters of support for use of the Columbia Heights Civic Plaza, one for the Farmers Market, one for a community dance and music festival, and acceptance of the Bruce Monroe Community Survey report and authorization to put it on our website. I would move to accept the consent agenda as written. Is there a second? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. The consent agenda is approved. Moving right along. Now that we've hit official business, the first item on the agenda is the zoning variance 19148 for 525 Park Road. While we're waiting for you to come up, I will remind the commissioners that I believe we had the pleasure of you being before us in November, was it? The details of this have not changed. What has changed is prior it was brought before us as a special exception, and now it's been decided that it really should have been a variance. So with that lead in, is there anything else you would like to tell us about it?
Sure. My name is Joe Bodo, and I'm the principal of Landmark Construction Development. And I'm here with Jennifer Burke. She's the architect on this project with our Michael Cross Design Group. Maybe you folks haven't heard her name, but perhaps you have. We're a developer that focuses mostly on the Georgia Avenue, sort of from Florida Avenue all the way up to Langley Street. We do mixed-use buildings, rejuvenation of that Georgia Avenue corridor. And you may have seen us just recently at the Georgia Avenue Winterfest. We were one of the main supporters of that event. Before I tell you about this project, I actually wanted to jump on Commissioner, since I own so many, I don't live in this ANC, but I own so many buildings in this ANC and this ward, I think it'd be remiss to say something. I won't talk about DCRA because that would take several days and several annexes and we'd all be sleeping, but we do have a problem with a lot of drug use in our vacant buildings, and I can say personally, this building, which I'm about to talk about, was a difficulty. And it was hard to get MPD to really do anything. The building was broken into several times, there was drug paraphernalia, and it was really hard to even get them to come inside the building to do anything. We subsequently alarmed the building, and they still won't go in the building when there's an alarm, and we have to dispatch some of our people, and of course this is frequently late at night. So it's tough. We've since secured the building, but you know, when you secure one building, people just move to the next. So it is a real problem, and I think there is a systemic problem that needs to be taken care of. Yeah, so when we were here in November, I don't know if I'll devolve into all the difficulties of the various things we thought we need, but it really wasn't quite clear to us and even to the Office of the Zoning Minister and the Office of Planning what we originally needed, because some of the legislation that had just come into being that was actually spearheaded by Mr. Pace, 1411, was people didn't quite know what was going on. We originally thought we didn't need any relief for this project, and then the Office of the Zoning Minister thought we needed a special exception. And then we went back to none, and then we're back here for a zoning variance. Essentially, it's an existing building, which is on a rather big lot, which is not normal for this neighborhood. And the existing building only covers 33% of the lot. It's a 12-unit apartment building. We're not looking to change the units. But to make the project economically viable and to make the units sellable, we
proposed a small expansion in the front and rear, but modest expansion only brought the building to 49% lot occupancy, which is much below the adjacent buildings and other projects that are close by. So we have actually gone in front of the BZA, and they just have advised us that just to dot our I's and go back here and make sure that you folks were still in acquiescence of the project. We're happy to share with anybody. We brought the same material that we had in November. We're happy to distribute it. We're happy to just say it's exactly the same or answer questions. It's really up to you folks.
Sure. Commissioner Frost, do you have a question?
Good evening. I just want to say thank you for coming out. I just want to know, when is your new hearing day for the BZA to make final decision?
The hearing is on March 29th? March 29th?
March 29th?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
I'll see if anyone else has a question, but just as a reminder, when this was before us in November as a special exception, we voted unanimously to support it. I frankly can't imagine that we wouldn't support this since nothing's changed except what is considered being relief. So, yes, Commissioner Nguyen.
I'm a little confused. What exactly is the variance?
The variance is for the lot, well, now we're going to have to devolve into the, but I will tell you, the variance is for lot occupancy. In the R4 zone, since it's a residential zone, it was never meant for apartments, there's not a specification for apartment, specific to apartments, what the lot occupancy is to be. There are for conversions, which is 60%. Since there is no, they go to the other column. The other column is 40%. Even though we think it's a conversion, and it was built in 1968, so that's the only way it really could have come into being, but the Office of Zoning Administrator ruled it a purpose-built building. So, and opined that we needed this relief, so rather than cause difficulties, we said, okay, it worked.
I think it's a conversion of an apartment building to an apartment building.
We would agree, but they don't quite agree with that.
I'm going to talk in real language. It's a conversion from an apartment building to an apartment building. And it's not a historic building. It's rather a very plain building. I can't imagine there's anything you could do that would diminish its attractiveness.
But I would, if I can opine, and I think Jennifer's done quite a good job, I think it's going to be a very attractive building. And that block is a little bit lackluster right now.
You're being kind.
Yeah, well, I mean, the folks are, of course, they're trying to move forward the project down the street, which you know has been kind of stopped because there's money issues. But the street needs it, and we'll actually be lowering the height of the building, actually. But I think the streetscape, what we've proposed, I think, is respectful of the streetscape, and it's at this odd juncture. I don't know if you know that Parks makes an odd swing. So what we've done is sort of our small addition in the front realigns with the park and follows that contour of Park Road, which I think finishes off a bit.
Yeah, the only comment I'll make, which I know I made in November, is if you have any room for a tree, you make me happy. It's not required. It's not part of what we're considering tonight. But Park is a hot street. There's very few trees.
But we love trees. So and then there's also a vacant tax lot next to us, which can never be developed because it's just a sliver. Yeah. And we're working with the neighbor to be able to beautify that, which I think will benefit.
Well, I'll give you one better. Before you spend any money on the tree, please reach out to me because I'm trying to do a community trees thing with Casey Trees. So
sure.
We'll get some free trees.
And we work closely with the arborists in that ward because we do so much work there. So you know we can use them as as well.
Are there any other questions from commissioners? Is there a motion?
A motion we support.
Do we support it?
We support it.
Yeah. Okay, so it's been motioned and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition? Any abstentions? Congratulations, you have unanimous support, 2 meetings in the
Thank you.
session. Again. The next item on the agenda is a resolution in support of disposition of square 2892, lot 105. The resolution is in tab 15. that, I will leave it to you to walk us into why we're voting on this again and what's needed this time.
Certainly. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm here with Eric Zuckerman. My name is Jessica Bloomfield from the law firm of Holland & Knight, and we are here to request your support for our offer to purchase district-owned land located at the rear of 3212 Georgia Avenue, which is also known as Lot 105 and Square 2892. And that's shown on the first page of that packet that I handed out to you. Lot 105 is partially vacant with approximately 2,200 square feet of land area. It's surrounded on 3 sides by private property and on one side by a public alley. It has no street frontage. The district has determined that it no longer has any need for this piece of land and has issued a request for offers to the public to purchase it. ZP Georgia LLC, who is the applicant in this case, is interested in purchasing this piece of land because it owns all of the private property surrounding it. As some of you may remember, in 2014, the Zoning Commission approved a PUD for the applicant's land that surrounds this site. The PUD will be developed with a mixed-use building with ground floor retail and residential units above, including considerable affordable housing. As shown in the packet, if the applicant is able to purchase the piece of property, will incorporate that district-owned land into the PUD to be developed as an open green space for the residents and the retail users of the building. Doing so, we believe, will help revitalize the Georgia Avenue corridor, improve the neighborhood, and clean up the currently vacant, abandoned site. I'd also point out that this ANC previously approved the disposition in general and also approved the PUD back in 2014. So with that, we're here to answer any questions, and we would hope that you vote to support our purchase of the property. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions from commissioners? Okay. Are there any questions from members of the community? Yes, Mr. Jordan.
So if I heard correctly, there's an RFP process going on?
Yes.
So why are we approving something? Have they awarded it?
No, they've not awarded. The request for offers has gone out to the public, and the public is required to submit the offers by the 17th of this month. So within that offer, it encourages applicants to meet with the community and request ANC and community support for their offer. And that's what we're asking for today.
So it's not supporting the disposition of the property?
Correct. The ANC already voted to support the disposition generally.
Yes.
I'm going to ask a legal question. How does this affect the new law that was just passed by Congress in the disposition of property that are used in conjunction with PUD? I know that there was discussion about this when we first came out and asked about purchasing that land, and subsequently that's changed. So how is that going to affect it?
Unfortunately, I'm not entirely sure how it will. I know that when we bring that property into the PUD, if in fact we're able to do that, we will request a modification of the approved PUD, which will undergo a scrutiny again by the Zoning Commission, and we would return to the ANC to go over that whole process. That's not really what we're talking about in this particular case. And I know that's not really answering your question. I don't know the direct answer to your question, but I can certainly provide that information. Sure.
This issue of purchasing this land, the development on the site that encircles this land, and the reason you want it to be able to have the building, what is the public benefit that the residents of the city are going to get from that land? You just said that that's going to be used for inner court.
Additional affordable housing. DEMPED hasn't clarified it 100% yet, but a percentage of the FAR used from this space will be additional affordable housing.
That's something that I will take to the commission, that they need to keep in their head. You know that information. I'm not saying I'm against it, but when a benefit that's coming and they don't know the answer to that, keep that in their head, whether you want to
cannot be developed independently, and it can't support a building independently. So one of the things that we requested in our original resolution, and we're carrying forward into this one, is that at least one thing, if any funds are generated from this, we want them reinvested in the community. We don't want them in the general fund. We don't want them going across the city. And we're not talking about a lot of money. But if it's not money that's generated, then the benefit would be affordable housing. And I think that that's what needs to be discussed when we come back before us with a modified PUD. But right now, we're just considering, do we want to dispose of this property? And thus far as I know, this is the only applicant interested in the property that has actually reached out to the ANC. So personally, it makes a lot of sense.
So, just to be clear on this, this is the property that you're talking about developing is the one that would block off all access, rear access to the properties on Queen Street?
No.
No.
It's a property, they got property already.
No, no,
No,
I remember Mr. Romeo Morgan was here, and his great concern was he had no access, rear access that he and the neighbors who got that property had since they owned the property. And when we put that building up, they had no way except the front to
That's not the same property. This is farther down.
It's a part of the development.
Oh, yeah.
I know where the property is down there, but it's a part of that overall development. So what profit is at the detriment of existing businesses and homeowners? And that was my question. That was my issue, and it still is my issue. That the land, when we talk about community benefit, doesn't benefit the community, benefits you. And there's no benefit to the businesses or the residents whose access is being displaced.
Well, in all fairness, there's no benefit to the city to retain ownership of this property either. That this is your proverbial white elephant. It is worthless. It doesn't front Georgia Avenue.
Well, it's not worthless. It's worth something to the developer to have a computed project or to have that eyesore.
Well, that's
Or
true.
something owned by someone else, so I don't look at it as worthless. I'm not concerned as always for the residents and existing businesses.
One more
I didn't
short,
hear anybody mention it like it was never happened. Never happened.
one more short-term benefit to the community. There's been significant drug activity there. It's overgrown, it's an abandoned building, and there's a lot of people back there shooting off. And we've agreed that if we obtain the property, the first thing we will do is raise the building and secure that area so it can no longer be used for criminal activity.
Commissioner Brown.
I'd like to echo Mr. Zuckerman. I am on the Georgia Avenue Lamont Street Public Safety Task Force, and as a member of the task force and somebody who's worked with the Zuckermans to install security cameras in the back of that alley, and who is aware of the crime activity that goes back there, I think that we need to have something back there to ensure the public safety of our residents and for those that live around there, particularly in the apartment buildings that are abutting this particular development. I don't see that it is a benefit to the community to have it vacant and to have it there unused and in the shape that it is currently in. And I think that it's beneficial when you're including it as an addition to this development. And I do agree that we should be working with our partners at DEMPED and to fight for community benefit as we see this development go forward.
I mean, it seems to me that all the architectural knowledge and know-how, that a simple walkway, walk path, walk through, some kind of way that someone could access to your property, I would be really ticked off
questions from commissioners? Okay, is there a motion?
There's a motion for this.
Okay, Commissioner Holmes supported it. Is there a second? Commissioner Brown seconded. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstention.
Thank you, Commissioner Frost. The motion carries 9 in favor, one against, and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is settlement agreement for Ann Pizza. Commissioner DeBester, is that something you're prepared to talk about at this time?
No, we haven't reached an agreement yet, but the owner can say that.
Okay. Well then, we will listen to what you have to say.
Sure. Hi everybody, I'm Michael Astoria, founder of Man Pizza. For those of you that don't know, we're going to be opening up what we call by the farmers market tomorrow, so come out and support and get some pizza. I guess where we left things off was a couple issues. The hours of operation and sales, we filed initially for 11 a.m. to 2 a.m. 7 days a week. And the proposal back was Sunday through Thursday, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. and Friday and Saturday from 11 a.m. to 12 a.m. And our proposal back was 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Sunday through Thursday and 11 a.m. to 1 a.m. Friday and Saturday. The other notable issues were the proposed to eliminate the last sentence in Section 5, that applicant will not have amplified sound in the summer garden patio. We're asking that we are allowed to have sound and that we will in fact comply with the Noise Control Act and DC Code 25725 to be constrained by those provisions to keep the sound at or below legal limits. I believe those are the only open issues. Is that accurate?
The kinds of access the farmer's market can have when it's in existence.
Yeah.
And what kind of movable furniture and how that relates to the public realm plan.
So we met with the Farmers Market Committee, and what we had agreed to, what we had talked about was the property line of the building. We would keep our patio 5 feet in from the actual property line of where we could have a garden patio to allow for a walkway for guests and consumers to be able to access the businesses and also cross through the park.
Is it going to be are you thinking about static kinds of seating or movable?
Well, let me ask, it sounds like that's more of a public space permit and less of a settlement agreement, so I'm happy to hear your thoughts on it, but as far as the outdoor license, I don't think that would be part of the outdoor license.
It will be movable. I think that is important because I don't think we yet know what this looks like. You know, having a patio and also accommodating the farmers market. I think we've come up with a good solution. But, you know, we're going to have to be flexible because we're in big support of that. And so if it's, you know, if we need more space, we'll make room for it.
Commissioner Wade?
With respect to the outdoor music, amplified music, what about the owners association for the apartments? What are they saying about live music under their windows?
Right. So in terms of the landlord of the building, to my knowledge, that they don't have issue with it.
But I think it's incumbent upon you to find that out before you come to us. We represent the owners and residents. So if they have a concern, they don't even know you're going to do it. You have to notify the building and plan to use advertising.
Everything we do with the summer garden goes through the landlord of the building. They are aware and they approved what our plans were. Yeah. They did, to again, to my knowledge.
I haven't gotten any of the amendments, so if your lawyer can send them to me, that would be really great.
Oh, you didn't get them from Paul?
Huh?
You didn't get them from Paul?
No, I didn't get them yet.
Huh.
Okay.
Okay.
This is okay, I'm going to take a few questions from the floor, and then we'll come back to commissioners. Yes?
Yeah.
About the hours there, the labor outside, the market opens Wednesday from 4 to 7:30, and like how many times are not to be drinking outside, or the market will be open?
Yeah, we, to the best of our ability, police, we don't allow, we only have a beer and wine license, but we don't allow beer and wine on the patio. It's only allowed to be consumed in the shop.
Okay. And Mr. Jordan?
Yeah, my concern is that the intent of that action, although technically it's private property, and it's supposed to be ceded to the larger plot, so that's really supposed to be public. And so my concern is that it's designed for shared use, not to either block off your own patio in some regard. That's really part of the public ground. It's really designed to go all the way up to a couple of there.
Yeah, that is, yeah, that's above my pay grade.
Well, it's not that is an issue with what you want to do.
So what you're saying is that when I looked at, we've gone through the plans, you're saying that there's a dispute about whether the landlord has rights to grant access to a summer patio, or they don't?
You have a chance to block off that as a sole use.
Okay.
I mean, I agree that there's a conversation that has to occur here. If anyone with a long enough memory, and I know that many people in this room are in that boat with me, but the whole conversation with Seaburger and the outdoor patio was very long and drawn out, and there was, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, there was an intent originally when the public realm and the civic plaza was created that it would be more of a unified vision. You recognize that in the pavers and in the concrete in the intersections, and yet one of those things that just was never baked into the process was there was also a hope that all the furniture would be uniform and that it would be more of a community space, and that people leaving the restaurants wouldn't necessarily sit in your summer garden, but they might sit in someone else's summer garden. And so I think within that framework, that, you know, there are things that could be done, not necessarily cost prohibitive, that embrace that community sense of place.
Yeah.
And there are other things that might be a little bit more costly to it.
Yeah.
So I think what Mr. Jordan and Commissioner Gebester and I kind of advocate for is just some kind of conversation to try to do what, you know, do what's possible to achieve as much as possible that higher goal.
Yeah.
Because that, you know, it is a very active space, and people do like to sit out there with their children, and you know, they like to come to the farmer's market, they like to eat. I presume at your restaurant very soon.
That's the hope.
Right. And so, you know, that's a conversation. I don't think that there's a right answer here necessarily, because I know that with some of the restaurants that opened up, they haven't embraced that spirit. So within what's already happened, if we can get really much closer to that, I think that's what we're asking.
Yeah, I think.
And also, the Economic Development Committee, one of the things we want to do is start addressing that plaza and all the problems that that plaza presents, and maybe getting a Friends of group that says administered by DPI. And that's something
Yeah.
that we can forward to try and organize folks, so there's some kind of continuity.
If honestly, if you could just get rid of all the dumb,
Yeah, that's one of
that would be a huge start.
Actually, that's one of the things we're going to do.
So I just on that note, not the gum issue, but we, you know, when we first signed the lease there, we put together relatively extensive plans to do exactly what you're suggesting, which is try to find a way to get, all of the tenants from that particular building to sort of come together and create more of a beautiful, sort of architecturally driven outdoor summer garden that could be used for all parties that would come to that particular area. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the landlord to support it, but we are completely open. I mean, we don't look to have a summer garden and close it off to end pizza guests only. We're really flexible about the beautification of it. We'll do anything in our power to help support you guys. It's important to us that we fit in and we make people feel comfortable and welcomed. I think it's going to be an uphill battle getting some of our co-tenants to do the same. And we even offered to foot the bill for some of it, but I'm happy to do my role and do my job to help support you guys.
Well, what I would say is all positive change requires a champion. So if
Yeah,
you're willing to be
absolutely.
a champion, I'm happy. So we don't have a settlement agreement finalized yet. I know you're still talking about that. May I ask quickly, when is your projected opening date?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow? Okay, so you will be opening without a liquor license?
Correct.
Okay. And when is the protest?
I think the 11th.
What? So is that what the filing date has to be?
Yeah.
Well, what I would be comfortable with proposing, just because we don't have that wrapped up, I would be comfortable making a motion to submit a resolution in opposition should the settlement agreement not be completed by that date, just so that we still have the option to continue the conversation with the understanding that it would not be violent if that comes to an adequate conclusion, and that it would be withdrawn whenever a settlement agreement is put into place. But that's just because the time of the beginning. We don't have the luxury of revisiting this next month. Would you be amenable to that?
Whatever you guys want to do. I'm pretty flexible. I thought we had sent over information, a week and a half ago on the settlement agreement, but apparently it got lost in
Well, if
the
we
abyss.
need to sit down, or if you can button it up quickly, I'm comfortable. I just don't want to use the window if you don't think that it will be.
I think it'll be.
Okay. Then I would let my resolution stand with the understanding that we wouldn't lift a finger to oppose unless that didn't happen. If that's okay. Does anyone, do commissioners have any concerns with that approach? Okay. So then I would make a motion that we send in a letter of opposition should we not button up the settlement agreement. Is there a second? Okay. Then all those in favor say aye. Any in opposition? Any abstentions? Then that's what we'll do. So for now, we'll just let the process work out. Should it fall apart, and I don't expect it will, then we have plan B. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, next item of business, resolution requesting change in street cleaning end time for Parker. Commissioner Gordon, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On a typical weekday on Harvard and on Columbia, one side of the street is allowed to be parked on, and the other side of the street is also allowed to be parked on except during rush hour to allow for a greater flow of traffic. However, on street cleaning days, this is reversed, and the side that's typically allowed for parking is no parking, the other side is allowed parking. There's a discrepancy, however, in that rush hour generally ends at 6:30, so most of the week one can park on both sides of the street after 6:30. However, on street cleaning days, for some reason, parking is prohibited until 7 p.m., which is well after street cleaning has been completed. And so this resolution would ask DDOT and DPW to work together to change those restrictions so that they end at 6:30, thus allowing folks returning from work to have the same amount of access to parking as they would have on other days of the week.
I'd like to co-sponsor that resolution.
Commissioner Wade has made a motion to amend it, to friendly amendment. And Commissioner Huntley? Okay. Commissioner Ross, would you explain?
No,
All right. Commissioner DeVestre? Okay, so there's a second. Commissioner Gordon, did you move to approve this with those amendments?
I would approve this motion with those amendments.
Okay, and Commissioner DeVestre is seconded. Just to not racing that too quickly, are there any other comments from commissioners? Are there any questions from members of the community? All right, then it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Any abstentions? Any objections? Motion carries. Thank you, Commissioner Gordon. The next item is a request to change hours of operation for the Airedale. I believe this is also a settlement agreement, Commissioner Goldschmidt? It is. Okay, then you're on.
Mr. Jordan from the Airedales here.
Hi, I'm Ben Jordan, I'm the owner of the Airedale on 14th Street, and I've just put in a request for Agra to change some of my hours to lengthen them a little bit.
What are the changes?
I was wanting to change the hours so that we can open at 7:30 a.m. on Saturdays and Sundays for English Premier League games, and so we're not going to 8 o'clock in the morning, and so that we can open on Mondays, so we have hours for Mondays, because our liquor license currently doesn't. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's a little short.
Is that better? Okay. We currently do not have hours to open on Mondays, and we'd like to be open on Mondays, and we'd like to be open a little bit earlier on Saturdays and Sundays.
Commissioner Goldschmidt, is this in keeping with other settlement agreements in the area?
It is. It's very similar to other settlement agreements, except the hours are very complicated. Did you have a chance to look at the hours?
I did. I did verify them, and thank you very much for double checking on that.
A lot of clerical work.
Yeah.
Is there, just out of curiosity, is there any reason why the hours aren't more standard? Because you could have standard hours even if you're not open during those hours as far as.
It's what we needed for it to operate, and so we thought we'd be specific. If it wasn't a really specific, or if it wasn't a hassle, it turned out it kind of was. But we're open just at different hours during the weeknights as we are on the weekends, and so it makes it look a little bit more complicated than it is, because we also have 3 different areas. We have a summer garden and 2 patio spaces, and so all the hours of those are also separate, and those are in keeping with the settlement agreement, which is more restrictive than the hours for the bar. So it ends up becoming a clerical nightmare, but it's not particularly complicated because we operate the outdoor spaces at times where the indoor spaces are, or the indoor space at times where the outdoor spaces are not open.
Well, I appreciate your specific list here and being very detailed. My only real concern is that it's difficult to grasp when the hours are very quickly.
Okay.
So if an average inspector were to come to your shop, they may not grasp it quickly, and it could cause confusion, which might not necessarily be helpful to you. And the other concern I have is, and I'm not saying I'm not okay with this, but the other concern I have is what I've seen happen in the past is someone really tailors the settlement agreement to the hours they need today, and then if they want to expand, they can't do so without coming back to this body and getting an amendment. So sometimes it's just better to think about, well, this is what you need today. If you were to grow, would you achieve those standard hours across the board and just ask those down? It can save you a lot of headaches in the future.
Oh, we've definitely had that conversation internally, and this does cover the hours that we would need, but there are no plans for any time soon for us to need hours that are not included.
So all you're suggesting is that for ease of you, for us, and for the inspectors, is that your hours of Monday through Sunday, 7 a.m. Sunday is different because we have the closing.
Yeah.
Monday through Saturday, open time closes to that. In other words, should anything happen, you can't see that before the
too specific.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, you put the burden on yourself. If you're okay with it, I can support it. I just wanted to bring it
Okay.
up. I agree with Commissioner Wade. Commissioner Frost?
Good evening. You saying your hours on Mondays will open at 7:30 a.m.? Will you still be
No, that's
selling
on Saturday and Sunday.
Saturday and Sunday?
Yes.
So your Monday hours are still 12 to 2?
That's correct.
Okay.
So we would not sell alcohol at 7:30 in the morning.
Okay.
No.
That's the only clarity I wanted. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the commissioners? Any comments or questions from members of the community?
Oh, no, we're totally fine with that. As specific as it is, we're fine with it.
Is there a motion?
I move to accept this resolution.
Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Should consider getting like a laminated matrix for your staff.
All right, the next item on the agenda is 1018 Irving Street. We are going to break this up into two parts, as they are on the agenda, since there are two BZA cases. How we're going to do this is we're going to let Mr. Gardner present each case in turn, and we'll have comments from the commissioners, and then we'll hear from members of the community. Mr. Gardner.
Hello, Commissioners. Greg Gardner, and this is Andrew Raguzzi. We're here to speak about our alley property known as 1018 Irving Street Northwest, which is within Square 2851, bound by 11th Street, Sherman Avenue, Irving, and Columbia Road. We received a BZA order in January of 2014. They're valid for 2 years. We prepared to file a building permit in August of 2015, but it was kicked back due to a regulatory law that was enacted or amended after our BZA order was issued, DCMR 12A 118. All properties submitting building permits need a street address, and street address in the March 14 law, street address can be assigned to lots that are not on Name Street or alley. So we met with Councilperson Nadeau in September of that year and started the process of naming the alley. We're still going through that process. I wish I could give you some feedback on that timeline, but I have about as much information as you guys do. We submitted documents to the council, it along with 5 other bills of the same type, were just kind of stalled at the committee of the whole. So we're going before the BZA to ask for an extension to order 18511A so that we can wait for the alley naming to continue, at which point we would be able to file for a building permit.
All right. And just to be clear, even though I said we're going to do this separately, just to help me on this first piece, is there a rationale for why this is broken into 2 pieces? I mean, I don't want you to get into second piece. I just want to know if there's a reason why this is 2 pieces.
They are 2 separate issues. 18511A would expire should it not be amended. 18511A would expire should it not be extended. And then 18511B is a completely separate zoning issue. We're asking for different relief than what was approved in the previous order.
Okay. Commissioner Wade, this is your district. Do you have any questions?
Yes, I do.
to follow through, I urge the commission to support 185118. I urge the commission to support it.
Okay. Are there any other questions from commissioners?
Question, one of the things in Commissioner Foss' report was that you couldn't find tenants. In the second issue, I assume that that's not part of this.
Excuse me,
It's the first issue.
just to make it clear, in my report, I did divide those two things separately, because I understood that it was two different cases.
Okay, sorry.
Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, this case A is the extension. Are there members of the committee? Yes, sir.
I have several questions for the developer, the applicant. You mentioned now the problem with street naming. Is there any mention in the file available at the website of the zoning department that makes any mention of this problem? The only justification for the extension that's provided there is difficulty finding tenants, and it makes it very difficult to receive both the commission and for the neighbors to respond to a justification that has never been presented.
We haven't filed our final documents on the case. They're due 2 weeks prior to the hearing, which is on March 29th.
Is there any mention in your filing of the problem that you are now putting before the commission as the reason for an extension?
Most likely not. In our initial filing is to get the application and the parameters in place, and then we support the filing prior to the hearing after meeting with agencies.
Are there any other committee?
I have two other questions. When you submitted this request for extension, you checked the box saying that there was no substantial change in any of the material facts upon which the board based its original approval in 2014. How do you reconcile that with then your submission on the following day of a request for a new variance for a completely new purpose and a new three-story residential structure?
The two issues are mutually exclusive, but there is no three-story residential structure, just to be clear.
How do you reconcile the fact that you checked the box saying there is no material change, no substantial change in any material conditions, with the fact that the following day you submitted a request for a variance with substantial changes?
I understand your question, but the two issues are mutually exclusive.
No.
A and B are handled as two separate cases, completely separate issues.
How do you reconcile the truth of your first representation? You said on one day, January 7th, I believe, there is no substantial change. On January 8th, you submitted an entire dossier proposing substantial changes.
But let me step in here a minute. 18511B is a completely separate case, and there's no guarantee that it will be approved or not approved. The extension is for the original case. The extension is an extension of time without altering the original case. If that's approved and 18511B is not approved, then there is nothing that needs to be reconciled.
Could I ask a third question then? You also now mentioned this August 2015 request for a building permit. Is there any mention in your original submission to the Board of Zoning Adjustment of the request for a building permit?
All of this will be backed up at our final submittal prior to the hearing.
How is the Department of Planning, the Advisory Neighborhood Commission, supposed to come to an opinion based upon your promises of future documents to be submitted to an unknown effect?
I hope it's from my testimony today to you to let you know our circumstances and the documents that we submit to public record.
saw some hands in the back of the room. Yes?
I'm gonna try to be patient here. Everyone here is a busy person, all right? It's 9 o'clock at night. I miss putting my son down. We went through this 2 years ago, to whatever extension it was. My wife's a real estate attorney. She filed the paperwork. They already had something to prove. Contrary to how I'm dressed, I'm a businessman as well. If you don't get things done on time, that's not my issue. And this should be denied. Get things done on time, get them done the way they're supposed to be done, and everything can work efficiently. This is this gentleman's job. That's fair enough. We all have jobs to go through day in and day out. All right? We've already gone through this one time. We're taking time out of our personal schedule. If they made a business decision that it's not going to be as profitable as they would like for it to be, then that's their issue. I have no interest in corporate welfare. With my time, the quality of my life in my immediate community, etc. So if the clock is run out on whatever the matter may be, then the clock is simply run out. That's it.
The reason I'm supporting the extension is because zoning and planning often on their instructions to the developer as well. So fairness is everyone has an opportunity. I support the extension. That has nothing to do with the fee section of this BCA variance request. So what we're simply doing is allowing the same time, if for some reason, in fact, they wanted us to vote last month on this issue. And my position was, I was not satisfied that our community had ample opportunity to meet with the developers, to know exactly what was going on. I would have ample opportunity. And so we moved it, we deferred it to this month's meeting, and which we did have a meeting with the community. Because the information I got at last month's meeting did not set well with me. There were no letters of support, no one was prepared. There was no record of having actually gone door to door and talked with the residents. So I didn't feel comfortable in even considering. So that's why I'm now supporting the extension only. So that's what I'm asking the commission to do. So my motion is to support.
I guess on A, it's more of a comment than
that too, is I completely agree with you that it's very complicated. And where this may seem like a really simple thing, though, it's not a simple thing because it's an alley lot. And even though it's zoned R4, that zoning really doesn't apply to alley lots. And so that's some of the difficulty where we've been trying to get answers from the Office of Planning and Zoning, because this is not something that they're really geared to consider. It's not something they do frequently. It's not something that our comprehensive plan really addresses. I think in the zoning rewrite, they recognize there is some need to have to address alley parcels because they're kind of these lots of real property that fall through the cracks, and there's no clear guidelines. And so I would say that part to me has been difficult to keep on top of as well. And so I totally agree with you that it's difficult to understand everything that's gone on here, and it has been for years. So I accept that. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Could I ask the commissioners if you would be amenable to a solution like the one you just took a moment ago with Ann Pizza, which is to oppose this motion, oppose this extension in the case that the adequate evidence is not submitted by 15 days prior to the hearing. We're being asked to take on faith that all of these things happen, and there's nothing in the public record at the time that they submitted this application on January the 7th until now to support what we've heard today. You could list your opposition, you could just delegate a member of your...
But that's not the same thing as a settlement agreement. So you're talking about African funds. So, I know what we can do, but what I'm suggesting is that's not what I know. And there are a lot of things we can do. We can flat out deny, we can flat out approve, we can approve with conditions, but we need to take an action. And my recommendation at this time, based on all, it's actually been more than 3 years that I've been dealing with this alley because it's always complaints when it was involved. And I've been the ANC commissioner forever. And so it's not new to me. The concerns are not new. The neighbors are different. The issues are still the same. And that is that it is a problematic piece of property back there. Were me, I would suggest that the city raise, put a garden back there, but I didn't have that authority because it's privately owned property. So privately owned property is just what it is, privately owned property. And we can have any domain. So, again, I would like to close the meeting.
Okay. Let me just ask.
I will apologize that the record isn't as thorough as I would like it to be, but my zoning attorney has had some health issues, and there is an issue that also comes up on B, where the filing is not as accurate as it should be, and it's not been amended.
Okay. I will note that I believe in the Office of Planning report, which was, I believe, written by Joel Lawson, indicated that the records were more robust. They did raise a question that they had no problem with the extension, provided that the documents do show up or are filed by the deadline. So, I mean, we could be in agreement with that. But that's really the zoning commission. They're going to look and see these major dates. I mean, we've had plenty of BZA cases where we've strongly supported it and the zoning commission did not. And we've had things that we were absolutely opposed to that they disapproved. So I will say one thing for the zoning commission and the BZA is they are truly independent bodies that really don't care about, that's a harsh thing. They really seem to exercise their full authority since they don't have any oversight. So, are there any other community members that would like to speak relative to this?
The A section, we do have,
The B section is coming next. Okay, so, seeing none,
I started with Councilperson Nadeau's office, and that process moved very swiftly initially, and I did get in touch with Commissioner Wade and Commissioner Bass when I found out that there was a bill proposed for the alley naming. I did not realize that the ANC was going to take up the issue at the meeting that month, and unfortunately I only knew after the fact that it was discussed at that meeting. But my notice when I spoke with Nadeau to find out the bill was in place was to you guys immediately after and prior to the meeting which was debated at.
Yeah, that did move very quickly. I don't have a problem with it.
Initially moved very quickly.
Yeah, initially it moved very quickly into quicksand. All right, so there's a motion on the table from Commissioner Wade to approve the extension of time. Is there a second? Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any in opposition?
Opposed.
Two opposed? Any abstentions? So it's 8 in favor, 2 opposed, 0 abstentions for the extension. Moving into 11E. Now you're making a proposal to change residential treatment. So how are you intending to change it?
Correct. So, to go back a little bit in the history of the project, our initial proposal to the ANC and to the zoning commission, or board of zoning adjustment, was for a 3-story building. It had 5 residential units and 1 office unit. It had lots of internal parking within the building and still had some open parking. Through a few meetings with planning and with at the BZA, the project was scaled back to a 2-story building. The square footage inside the building is about the same as the original proposal, but instead of a stepped back building, it was a straight extrusion off of the existing footprint. So what we were approved with, which was actually a much more complicated zoning list of area and use variances, subdivided the property into 3 lots, allowed a 2nd story to be built on the entire footprint, and put an office use and 2 artist use inside those 3 lots. So there are 3 independent buildings. Although they're adjoined and look like one mass, they aren't condos, they're 3 individual lots. Two things we are proposing in our changes. The first is a change in height. Building height, by the legal definition of the zoning code, would change 7 inches. The actual height, which appears to the normal eye, is 21 inches, and that's to the top of the parapet. Right in front of us is a comparison. In addition to the parapet height increase, is also 2 penthouses to give access to the roof. Those aren't included in a building height measurement, but they're noteworthy, and I wanted to make sure I'm clear with everyone that they are there. It's actually a by right element. It's not part of our zoning variance, but it's something that I want to be clear on. The main reason for this change is because I want to retain some original brick detail within the building. If you look at the original brick cornice, it steps out about 6 inches and then has a metal cornice detail similar to all the row houses in DC. Our original rendering was a version of a 3-story building, and it got deleted in this design element, but it is something I'd like to retain in the building. And in order to keep the egress windows at an allowable height, which is 44 inches off the floor, there is a small increase in the building height. The second issue we're trying to address in this amendment is to change the 2 artist use to single-family dwellings. We think this is a less intense use on the property for a couple reasons. These two artist studios will become 3-bedroom units. We're going to reduce the parking available, total parking on site, from 8 parking places to 6, 2 for each lot. And in an artist studio of this size, they're allowed 10 workers inside of each studio. So that's 20 total in those 2 lots. And converting those to single-family dwellings of 3 bedrooms should be less people total inside of the building, and it also would be less coming and going during the day, because it should belong to a single family. Not an apartment, not a single family with accessory dwelling, but one single unit. Andrew has a couple details of the project, most of which still remain from the previous project. Most of these were put together in our conversation with the Department of Transportation from the initial meeting for the larger 3-story 5 residential unit building. And DDOT believes these still apply to this smaller project.
So some of the things that we're going to change is the lighting in the alley. So currently there are 3 large lights that sit up very high and cast light into everybody's backyard. The lighting that we worked with DDOT on focuses that light to stay very low on the alley. We're also going to remove the light that's currently there, and we will provide lighting in the alley. Again, and that's to do so to become less obtrusive to the other neighbors. We're also doing pedestrian striping around the building, installing no parking signs, also making sure that there is specific traffic flow in and out of the alley to cause the least amount of impact. Lastly, we also worked with DDOT on making sure that all waste containers will be held within the boundaries of the property so that nothing will be left out in the alley. This plan that we came up with was in full support and guidance with DDOT. Of the building piece to it, the pieces that we want to retain, again, are that 100-year-old brick detail, which I think is keeps the building in the correct position with the neighborhood. It fits in better. I think it makes for a better looking building. There are several brick openings all the way throughout the building, which this would allow us to maintain all of those. And again, it's a nice historic detail that will make the building more appealing. We'll also be adding a green roof to different portions of the building. I think this will be a nice element for the neighbors. It will also provide a green roof.
Part of the green area ratio for these.
We'll also, on the north side of our project, where you see this parking space, we work with all these neighbors here to not only replace all their fences to keep it, to keep them, again, keep that area nice. We also have green spaces with trees and plantings out there. The idea is to fill this space with a lattice and hedge so that we can add a green element to that side of it. The last thing that I want to discuss is something that was brought up in the last meeting by Mr. Frost and Ms. Loveway, was our community outreach. Past 3 days, I have spent 8 or 10 hours out going on the bordering that block. There are 45 houses there. I've knocked on nearly every door to get their input on the property and our proposed changes. Everybody was presented plans. Everybody was given the information, and we ended up with 23 letters of support, which I thought was a very, very positive. I do. We provided them ahead of time, and here are the copies. I also have originals.
If I might ask a question. Okay, so there's 23 letters of support. Do you have a total of how many residents may be in opposition? I know we have 3 here, I think is easy. Yes, there may be others, but I'm just kind of curious on the ratio.
So of the people that I spoke to, there were 3 people that weren't prepared to sign the letter. One of which was a woman who said, "I don't open my door for strangers." I can't really blame her on that. Another was a girl who was on a work call, and the third was somebody who just wasn't aware of the scope of the project and just didn't care to weigh in. But of the people that I reached, it was a very, very high percentage of people who were not only in support of the project, but very aware of it and very positive about change coming to that alley.
Okay, I have a couple more questions, and I see Commissioner Frost has some questions. I presume Commissioner Way has some questions. If I'm looking at this correctly, you've split this into 3 different tax lots.
Correct.
You're in the process or hoping that the alley will get named because you need addresses. Will they be 3 individual addresses?
Yes.
3 separate numbers?
Right now, we own one address. Part of the subdivision process, we left our one address and created 2 lots.
Okay, well, okay, I'm actually trying to get clarity here because there's a point. I'm trying to figure out if this is going to be, I mean, currently it's listed as 1018 Irving. Once the alley is renamed, I presume it would be a different number with a different street. And I'm wondering if it would be like 2310, 2308, 2306, whatever that court is, or if it's going to be one number with A, B, and C. The reason I'm asking that is because if it has a name and it has an address and it's in Ward 1, even though it's not in the RPP system, people can get Ward 1 stickers for their cars that park on the streets. And I'm bringing this up because I know that one of the concerns is traffic going through the alley, which is 10 feet wide in the south. And I'm just wondering if there's, you'll do what you need to do, but I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity here for people to park on the street throughout the neighborhood rather than having it in the alley. Because getting an address into the Ward 1 sticker for the car is very easy. For all a commissioner has to do is reach out to DDOT and ask for it, and it's added to the system. So I'm just throwing that out there as something to think about. And without Commissioner Frost, unless Commissioner Wade,
Thank you. I just want to get clarity. Y'all seeking a variance for 2507.3, correct?
Correct.
And this variance, I'm going to read to the public and to the commission what this variance says. Is an existing one-family dwelling located on the alley lot that abuts an alley less than 30 feet in width and shall not be converted, altered, remodeled, restored, or repaired for use as a one-family dwelling if the cost of the conversion, alteration, remodeling, restoration, or repair exceeds 1/2 of the value of the structure immediately prior to the time of the conversion, alteration, remodeling, restoration, or repair. Non-residential structures located on these alleys shall not be converted, altered, remodeled, restored, or repaired for human habitation regardless of cost. I want to ask, why y'all going to the BZA seeking a variance for a one-family dwelling, and this is not necessarily one-family dwelling on the alley lots?
I can't say if it's planning or zoning has directed us that converting to single family is actually an area variance under 2507.3 because of the alley width.
Okay.
That is the route that they, which is, I'll add, different than the route that we were told to take 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Did the zoning administration, I never seen nothing like that uploaded to your website. Is there any way you could send that information to me in writing?
It was as part of a meeting with the Office of Planning.
The Office planning?
I'm sorry, I can't say exactly those planning or zoning, I just don't recall.
Okay, thank you.
But it's because the alley lots are not, and the specifications for them inside the zoning code are very unclear, it is a moving target. It really is difficult to nail down where they want us to go from one thing to the next.
Okay, thank you.
What improvements are you going to make to that alley, which looks pretty ratty right now, to make it amiable for anyone who live in it? I know a lot of the retaining walls in the alley are falling apart. I know that's the responsibility of other owners. I know that that alley is very hard to navigate. I can barely drive my car down. No less emergency vehicles could get there. Why would we say that you could have residences in there?
Well, we're really hoping the improvement we're making to our building and our structure is going to help spur the overall development of what mostly is private property conditions that we're speaking of. And the improvements we're making goes to improving the interaction between pedestrians and cars inside of an alley, because alleys really are used by both people, both from a lighting point of view, providing striping, and even a crosswalk within the alley, just because of the configuration of the pedestrian walkway.
And why are you changing from an artist use to residential use, other than you want to?
Truthfully, it is not, and I've said to both the BZA and to this ANC a few years ago, this is not a feasible project. I mean, the investment and difficulty to build in an alley in a contaminated automotive repair site is too expensive to build at the value of artist studio.
Then why did you buy it?
Well, I would like to remind the commissioners that weren't here 8 years ago that the original proposal was a 3-story building with 5 residential units. So while that was not supported by the BZA, this commission did vote to support that. And I think that's what you had in mind when you purchased the property. So
I did, and I'll specifically address the point. I mean, I am an architect, that's my primary function here, but I am the owner of 753 Development, which is the owner of the property. I believe that an automotive repair shop should not be in the middle of a residential block. And I believe that having a residential use in a residential block is much better for not only the members of this block, but also for the neighborhood. And I still believe that the small scale that we have here of office and 2 residential uses provides eyes on the street both in the day and the night. We're reintroducing windows onto the alley, both on the ground floor and on the second floor. And we're creating not a lot of activity. I mean, 2 homes. We're on a block of over 45 individual lots, and some of those lots there's a lot that has 30 residential units on it. Okay? We're just creating a small amount of people looking out there, and it's a use that already exists on the block.
I just wanted to make a statement on something that you said, and it's all well and good development, modernization, revitalization, but this city had plenty, and this city had alleys that had garages. Guess what? Built in the alleys. That's where they were supposed to be.
So to the point that I made earlier, my name is Tokes Laddie Joey. I'm at 3029 11th Street. My house, the western portion of the back of my house backs into the alley. Now, to the point that we're making about the signatures, and it coincides with the point I was making earlier. When we went through this originally, I had a list of probably 25 signatures, which I took to the BZA when we were in opposition. The reason that I don't have the list today is, as I stated before, I have a job, and I have a family. And we're going through this for the second time, and I have not had the bandwidth or the capacity to fight this a second time. To the point that you've made, Ms. Commissioner, and to the point that this gentleman has made over here, in business, the city has a plan, and in business, when we're making investments, we take the feasibility of the project into account when we make the investment. So if I walk into everyone into this room and I say I'd like to buy a new car, but I'm $1,000 short, is everyone give me $50? That's my issue. You know, then I buy the car that I can afford. It's the same thing with the project. For these gentlemen to then say that the project is not feasible, well then that's the issue of the cost basis. They paid too much for the project. The project went out, whoever was selling the building, the city or whoever it may be, went out and sold it to the highest bidder. You didn't have to be the highest bidder. You could have passed the project and you could have gone to the next project, right? So for us to then come in and say, okay, the price at which you bought the project, in order for it to be adequately profitable for you, now you're going to come in and you're going to build extra density into what is already one of the densest parts of the city. That's not my issue. I'm sorry, yes, sir.
These gentlemen's profits or non-profits don't move me that much. I want to know what your specific opposition is.
My specific opposition to the project is that, for one, we don't need the additional height back there, and we don't need the additional density. We're already in the densest part of the city. I live on 11th Street, the cars going up and down all the time. I bought into that, that's absolutely fine. But to put additional density into the alley, we're just getting to the point that the commissioner here is making, then where does it stop? If we want to add housing to this property, if we want to add housing to Columbia Heights, there are plenty of row houses up and down Columbia Heights, up and down 11th Street where I live, that we can all point to at any time that can be refurbished. We do not need to go into alleys. This is a hectic part of the city, it's a dense part of the city, I like it. But the little bit of tranquility that we have behind our houses, I'm not willing to forego for someone else's business purposes. And the fundamental issue here is, listen, the project was zoned for a particular purpose. The property is zoned for a particular purpose. When you make the investment, you take that into an account. We went through this one time already, and that's why I'm very frustrated. We went through this one time already, and they went with a very ambitious project, which was denied. And the BZA approved the subsequent project which they have now, which was over 2 or 3 years ago. So to me, this is silly. What are we here for here? The BZA approved the second project. You can go with the second project, or you can sell it. And if you sell it for a loss, that's your issue. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Frank Crochet, and I live at 3015 11th Street Northwest, 10 feet from the property in question. I sent a letter to all of the commissioners, and I would just amend 2 words on the first line of page 9. Rather than saying the applicant is within his rights as regards the measurement of height, I would ask you to correct that to maybe. The rules on the measurement of height of building have changed during the time that their original case was proceeding. If they are coming back now with a new height, with new plans, they cannot grandfather in the ceiling height. They must refer to the definition of height that's currently in effect, and that puts the building somewhere in the range of 23 feet, what began as an 18.5-foot building. I don't find in the request, again, any information about a request, an area variance, a request for area variance to permit the additional height, whether it's 1 inch, 20 inches, 21 inches, 5 feet. There is nothing in the request, so therefore the Bureau of Planning, the Office of Planning, the other responsible parties, including yourself, cannot form an opinion because the file that was submitted does not accurately represent the nature of the project that's being proposed. Moreover, with all due respect to a professional architect, the measurements are simply contradictory. In one place it says 20 inches and 20 feet 9 inches, and another it says 23.9 inches on the same page for exactly the same measurement. How is anyone among you, and the neighbors, or anyone else able to evaluate what the accuracy of that is? There also are no scaled dimensioned measurements of the existing building, so that those of us who do live in the neighborhood could assess what the impact of the additional height would be. They have gone to the neighbors. I noticed they didn't notice the sofas in the alley as they've been for a week or so. They didn't put in a call to 311 to remove the sofas, so they've been in the neighborhood. They don't seem to have much attention to their property. The issue of their financial advantage or disadvantage is completely invisible to an area variance request. An area variance request is solely to permit, as they said originally, a two-story structure that would require 1 additional foot over the existing structure could be a legitimate area variance because it makes the entire project viable, tenable as a construction. Now coming with a 3-story proposal for a different use is violating the very process, abusing the process. Going to the Bureau of Zoning in 2013, it was very clear, I believe, from the record that they would not have been approved for their 3-story residential building. Now they're coming back with another 3-story residential building. On the question of the roof structures, one of them, I believe, is 173 square feet. As they told us in the meeting that Commissioner Frost kindly organized a few days ago, that would have a wet bar. The other is 120 square feet. According to the zoning regulations and the building code, a penthouse can only be used for rooftop access, and 30 square feet of associated storage for, if they need shovels or tools for their green roof, they can have 30 square feet. 127 square feet is clearly, 170 square feet, I'm sorry, with a wet bar, is turning the roof into a party room, which means noise at all hours of day and night, disturbing the peace and the tranquility of the residents. The bottom line of my position that I would put to the commissioners is that the information that they have provided in the public record that's available on the Department of Zoning website is completely contradictory, incomplete, provides no basis for the area variance that they're requesting, and I hope that the Commission will take a strong position of opposition.
Thank you, although I would like to make one clarification. And maybe it's a legal technicality, but penthouses aren't considered 3rd stories. I know that it's physically on top of the 2nd story, but a penthouse structure is not considered a story.
A penthouse, I'm reading from the section 411.5. A penthouse shall not be permitted on the roof of a detached dwelling, semi-detached dwelling, row house, or flat in any zone, except under certain very limited conditions. Those limited conditions are that they contains only stair or elevator access to the roof and a maximum of 30 square feet of storage space ancillary to the rooftop deck. 170 square feet is not rooftop access, a vertical rooftop access and storage space. It's a 3rd story. It's also not separated from the living spaces on the 2nd story by any doors, by any, that's obviously habitable space.
I'm going to disagree with you, but fortunately that's why we have the PZA, is because that's what they look at.
I can clarify one issue. The building code speaks to penthouses in one capacity, and the zoning code speaks to penthouses in completely different capacity. The zoning code allows uses accessory to the roof, and when we're speaking of the square footage there, he's really including stairs and the opening down to the floor below. I do not believe there's a square footage within the zoning code requirement. It's limited to 1/3 of the roof area.
Actually, I want to hear from, I think we have one more community member president, sir.
My name is Jacob Ellinger, 1023 Columbia Road. I border the entire length of my house, borders the most narrow part of the alley, and the rear of my property is, I believe, 10 to 12 feet from their property and one of the proposed parking spaces. Listening to this, well, number one, it's a tough act to follow. I'm not nearly as smart as the last gentleman, but there's a lot here. We listen to this presentation, and we hear things about lights being redirected, a tiny brick border on a building that's falling apart, but if anyone's seen it, to me and the residents I've talked to, has no historical value whatsoever, and is not very nice to look at even if it were restored and beautified. Very little detail on that building. We heard everything in this presentation except, to Commissioner Cross' point, what this is actually all about. We didn't hear anything about the width of the alley and of the variance being changed to accommodate residences and commercial space in an alley that currently is not approved to do so. So my concerns are, I could spend an hour talking about how they got 23 signatures by convincing people that the alley would be beautified. I could have gone around to others' points if I didn't have a job and done the same thing with all my points and gotten 23 signatures. So instead, I'll focus on the real issue here. The infrastructure of the alley cannot accommodate and support anything, in my opinion, let alone residences. The current approved project, I will disagree with the developers. When they talk about these art studios, for some reason people in our community are thinking of artists with cute hats sipping wine, looking at art and having 10 people in there. There wouldn't be 10 people in an art studio at one given time. However, these residences that are 3-bedroom residents will have between the two of them, 8 to potentially 12 people living in an alley that's currently not zoned for this and has no infrastructure for anything. Me living in that alley and working from home, I can tell you as it is, with nothing back there but an abandoned building, there's a utility truck in that alley probably once every 2 to 3 days between Verizon, Comcast, DirecTV, DC trucks doing maintenance, garbage cleanup going through that. My house being in the position it's in is hit on average, literally physically hit, once a month. So while there's a million other issues I could waste time talking about, when the actual variance here, to Commissioner Cross' point, is about the alley width requirement being essentially, void to accommodate their project. The alley can't support the current traffic. And to the developer's points about trying to make it safer for pedestrians and for automobiles, there currently are barely any pedestrians in the back alley. There only will be pedestrians when there's residences that have no access to the street. There's currently no traffic because it's not a main street yet, and there's no thorough traffic. It's simply a couple people that currently have private parking back there. Certainly not 6 spots, which a couple days ago was 8 spots, but just reduced down to 6. The quality of life, I know other people have mentioned profitability, and I will as well. For one point, number one, the developers talk about it. That's their claim of hardship, because it currently wouldn't be profitable about this project. I love profits. I want everyone in this room to be profitable, but not at the expense of everyone else in our community. And the reality is, while they would become profitable, my house would absolutely go down in value, yet I'm sure my taxes would go up because it would look better on paper. But the quality of my life, and it's not about profit. I'm in for the long haul. I bought 6 years ago. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. It's about quality of life. I know everyone that backs up to that alley was invested in their properties to make their back patios safer, nicer, to beautify the alley, to beautify their homes, to move bedrooms from the front to the back so that we can enjoy our spaces. And to now have that loss for what we thought when I bought as a homeowner, I thought that would be commercial property. And to Commissioner Wade's point, I was there when it was an auto garage. And there were problems there, I never had one complaint. Because I understood when I bought it, it was commercial, I expected some level of noise, and they were respectful, and they were good neighbors. They weren't trying to, figure out how to maximize the property and get as many people in there as possible, or make it as advantageous to them as possible. So, I guess in closing, I'd ask that people really stick to what this is about, which my understanding is alley width, not lighting or whether we should have residents or not. And the current alley can't accommodate what's there currently. It simply can't. If you don't believe me, I've got a slew of pictures I will take into the meeting on the 29th. I'd be happy to send them to the commission. My house, I have damaged. I'm currently in a lawsuit with a private company that had a very small truck that just, they originally damaged my fence about a year ago, but since then it continues to deteriorate by getting hit more and more frequently. And unfortunately for the developers, we've discussed remedies. There aren't any. It's a 10-foot alley with telephone poles in them. There's no remedy that we could put to make this alley a thoroughfare and have it safe for pedestrians, safe for traffic, and to protect my property and the property of everyone else that backs up here. So thank you.
Yes, sir.
Really quick, one thing that Jake was speaking out that I thought, when we rename that street pops up on Google Maps, or Yahoo Maps, or whatever have you. The first time everything is backed up on 11th Street. What's going to happen is all these people that are backed up on 11th Street, Waze or whatever traffic navigation system they want to use, when that name pops up, all of a sudden we'll have all these people coming down. So, for example, we have an event over at, they have a marathon, or whatever happens, they back up 11th Street. Or they back up Urban Street. If I'm using Waze and say, hey, go up and make a right on this street here. I'm not cars in front of me, cars in back of me. And like Jacob said, even if I'm not a big person, I drive a 96 Camry, I can barely fit to that. And if you're in that alley, I was saying, you can't get out of your car. When you're in the narrow car alley, you can't even get out of your car. And when the Verizon guys come through, what I quite often ask myself, they must crawl out the back of the van. Because there's no way they're even opening the doors and getting out that alley. So what you're saying is you want to rename the street to pop up on every single navigation system. So if someone's late to work, all of a sudden they're being rerouted behind my house?
I honestly don't think anyone's going to be rerouted for a one-block alley. What I will tell you is anyone who's interested in doing that is already doing it, because I've seen that in other alleys that aren't named.
Just to clarify really quick, on my point of infrastructure, it's not just about noise. That is a downside. It'll reduce quality of life for us. It's not just about noise. These residences and our studios will have deliveries. They'll all have utilities. They'll have realtors potentially coming in and out, tenants, guests of the tenants, emergency assistance, garbage disposal, which was an afterthought as of a week ago, but there's still no good plan to address. When you have residents that don't back up to the street and no extra land around it, it is an infrastructure problem. So even if my opinion of what the noise and the traffic and the pedestrians and the cars didn't matter, the infrastructure cannot even allow for basic utilities, emergency service, deliveries, or trash disposal for that matter.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Frost, you look like you have something to say.
Yes. I want to know, can y'all elaborate on your second variance in terms of height requirement relief? I brought that up because I haven't seen the updates to your application. And can you also let the members of the public when you're going to update that information so they have a chance to review that?
And once again, as I mentioned before, my legal counsel has had some health issues and he is running a little behind. And I do think this is a problem because it's not noticed, although I've been communicating it since when I came before you last month, that we also had height as well as use inside of here. It will certainly be updated 2 weeks prior to the hearing. It is a commitment I've gotten from my counsel, but I do understand that it could be a little unclear when just researching the public record. We are proposing to change the height. One of the neighbors mentioned that the way height is measured has changed since our variance was issued to a current variance. When I mentioned that we have a 7-inch height increase, it's from However, when variance was applied for and approved, building height was measured to the ceiling of the uppermost floor. So at that time, it was 19.5 feet, even though the roof peak of that structure was 23'3". So in concept, nothing changed there except the legal definition of how height is measured. The Board of Zoning Adjustment has made clear that it should be clarified if we're going forward with an amendment. And certainly, we would be proposing from roof peak to roof peak. Just to also...
And can you talk about, is there any deviation in that amendment process in terms of your height?
The total deviation?
Yeah, is there any deviation?
There is a deviation. It's the increase of 7 inches from roof peak to roof peak.
I agree. Thank you.
But overall, it's still the 21 inches we're talking about, which is how you view it from the parapet. And that has more to do with how the roofs come together and having a height that meets rail capacity for even mechanical uses up there, green roof service, maintenance, and solar panels. I did want to address some of the points that the neighbor Jacob Erlanger brought up. He's right. He is the most affected here. I mean, his house runs along the narrowest part of the alley. I think the question here is an active automotive repair use worse or better than our current proposal? It is an artist studio with 20 people working in it. We aren't talking about an individual studio. We're talking about two 2,500 square foot spaces. And DC limits the artists to 10 per each. It's 2 artists per 450 square feet. So, I mean, I think the question here is what we're proposing here less intense than the previous use? And Jacob was there for 6 years. We've owned the property for over 3, so it's essentially not been in use. And even before that, I mean, the business was winding down, which is how the property got put onto the market.
So my question to you now is, a few months ago, you were telling me that the virtues and values of the law and the possibilities of the law and why it would be a good deal for the community, and how you would be able to enhance and improve the community. What you're saying now about the 3 individual lots is the same sales pitch you gave us for the lots. Now you're downplaying and talking as if they were a bad thing. So you were selling us a bad thing originally, and now that you have a little wiggle room in the zoning and you can make more money, then it's more advantageous. So now the laws are, I mean, the studios are cool. They were a bad idea. I'm not feeling this. And basically, unless someone else has a question, have a great man child that I get home.
I apologize if that's the impression you got, but I was...
I've had a lot of questions because you've given a lot of questions. Each time you come, you've given a different set of questions. So, of course, I have a lot of questions.
One of the things I said when I was in front of you asking for the artist studios is this was not a feasible project. This is the project that planning said would be viable in their eyes. But it wasn't feasible, and I don't want to make the feasibility argument.
No,
What
that's
I-
not what you said.
Actually, Commissioner Wade, that is what he said.
He said
I
that they
remember
couldn't
that.
make as much money.
No,
They
no,
couldn't
no,
make
no,
as much
no,
profit.
no. The original proposal was for 3 stories and 5 units.
Right.
When that was shot down at the BZA, he came back with a proposal that was essentially what planning and zoning told him he could do. And Mr. Gardner at that time said, this is what I've been told would get approved, but I don't see how to make it work. That is what
But
he
he
told us.
had all these plans where he told us it would work. So, I mean, if he didn't think it would work, to me, that would have been a great time to have scrapped it. But he
2013, the justification for the height was that they had to have big windows for the artist studio and that they had to have a huge parapet above the windows for visual appearance. Now they're coming back and telling us they're no longer going to build artist studios and they need more height. They need taller windows and taller parapets. There seems to be a truth deficiency here in their representation from 2013 until today that casts serious doubt as to whether any of their representations can be relied upon.
Well, frankly, I'm hearing enough from both sides to give me serious doubt. I just want to be clear on that.
Can I make just one closing statement? I agree we have 3 people here that are strongly in opposition of this. I knocked on the doors. I met with the people. I shook their hand. I looked them in the eyes. I spoke to them about this project. I think it's wrong for these 3 individuals to discount those letters.
It's more than 3, and you know that there were more than 3 in our meeting last week.
I'm going to stop right here. I will.
I did the same.
I asked for respect. I didn't recognize you. Sit down, please. Yes, ma'am.
I just like to say that I did talk to you in my house, and I was not one of the ones that signed the letter, just because, again, I came tonight to hear more about the project. I, as a resident, am also concerned about access to the alley, mostly for safety. Like during the snowstorm, a few weeks ago, we had an ambulance pull up to my neighbor's house because they had an issue. You could not put an ambulance in that alley. Like, I would be worried for anyone that is living back there, like for offices, you know, like, you're there during the day, you walk in, you can walk out, people who are living there, it's different. So, at this point, I'm not for or against. I certainly would like to see something back there, because the alley is shady right now. And, like, we just moved in November, we've not been here long, we were here 2 weeks, and our back gate got tagged with graffiti. There's no visual safety back there. My husband feels like he's going to get mugged every time he parks his car back there. I'm at 318 Sherman Avenue. So we would like to see something happen. Like, for it just to sit there abandoned is not good for the neighborhood. But at the same time, it needs to make sense. So someone needs to answer the question of how do emergency services get back there? Where do people put their trash? How are they going to fix the alley? We have a small car. We have a hard time getting through that 10-foot alley. And I would think that a lot of people would be concerned about what's going on back there.
Thank you. All right.
One more, 2 cents. I've spoken to a lot of folks, including probably 2 commissioners that might have voted on this issue however long ago. I spoke to Bill Brown, and I spoke to Betty Hare, and both do not agree that residential use is good for alleys.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Kushner. All right, Commissioner Wade, do you have a motion on the table?
Yes. I move that we deny the referral request for BZA case number 1851.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion's been introduced and seconded. What I'm willing to do, Commissioner Wade, is, should this be approved, I would like the report to enumerate the concerns, so that should the BCA consider it differently, they at least know what the specific concerns are. I would also like to take a vote on those. To be clear, and not, that is not up or down. What's supposed to vote? Commissioner Brown, do you mind taking the roll?
Just to clarify,
Sure.
a yay is an opposition and a nay
The
is...
motion is to oppose, so a yay would be that you agree to oppose.
Before the vote, if there's anything that would be helpful to come back to the ANC after we have supported the file, the BZA file, we would be willing to do that and come back to next month's meeting, just so that everything that I spoke about here is in the record, and then maybe just clarification questions. We were willing to do that.
No, and I appreciate that, and I'm agreeable to that. That's why, presuming this motion passes, I would like a bulleted list of what the concerns concerns are, because I want to be really clear with the BZA, what the issues are. I want you to be clear what the issues are. I would like to give you something to respond to. If the BZA kicks it back to us. I think the one thing that we want here is more transparency and something that's really fact-based. So, Ms. Commissioner Cross, we're in the middle of a
I understand that. I just want to elaborate on the community meeting, some of the issues that were raised. So it's in my committee report, density, increase of car and foot traffic, quality of life, noise and sunlight that will affect surrounding properties, trash pickup, environmental contamination on the property, proper access to the alley, crime, safety, infrastructure of the alley, accessibility to the alley for emergency vehicles, and sufficient lighting in the alley.
I appreciate all that. Can you give that to Commissioner Wade or myself so that it gets in the report?
Okay.
I mean, if those are the numbers, or those are the bullets, I would like Commissioner Wade to look over them. I would like her to agree with it, and I'd like it all in the report that goes to the BZA.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Brown?
Marvin Johnson.
Yay.
Swiss Amaron, absent. Tom Porter.
Aye.
That's a yes?
Yes. Yes.
Matthew Goldschmidt.
Yes.
Chu Wen.
Yes.
Richard DeVester. Darlene Frost.
Extension.
Kent Bass.
No.
Bobby Holmes, absent. Rashida Brown, yes. Diana Wade. Yes. Margaret Cunningham.
So the motion to oppose passes 8-1-1.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. All right. The next case on the agenda is BZA 19235, or actually we can probably do 235 and 236 together, which is 753 Columbia Road and 755 Columbia Road. What are you planning?
This is a BZA application, two BZA applications, 19235 and 19236. The applicant is requesting a special exception for 753 and 755 Columbia Road. The applicant is requesting a special exception to construct an addition and convert an existing two-story dwelling into a three-unit condominium for both properties. And I've invited them here today to present on their
Good evening, committee. I'm Rami Ali from Ram Design, the project architect for the Columbia Road projects. And with me is the owner, Irene Dublavina, and our zoning counselor, Alex Sullivan. Actually just stepped out. We're here to present the projects on 751, 753, and 755 Columbia Road Northwest. They're actually 3 lots. And we are proposing on the vacant lot, which is 751, a 2-unit by right project. And the adjacent 2 properties, 753 and 755, is where we are applying for special exemption to convert the existing single family to a 3-unit apartment building. The development overall does meet all the special exemption requirements, and of course meets the zoning requirements as far as we are within the maximum building height. We are within the 35 feet. We are within our lot occupancy, We are also, of course, within our setbacks. We are required to provide a minimum of 3 parking spaces for the 3 lots. We are providing a total of 8 parking spaces. If we were to combine all the 3 lots together, we're getting a total of 8 units. And that's why we decided to add our parking count to 8. This way we'll have a 1-to-1 ratio. And the way we're accomplishing that 8 parking spaces, the 3 lots combined, they can only give us a total of 5 parking spaces at 9 feet. The way we accomplish the 8 parking spaces, given the very generous setback we have almost 60 feet of backyard on these lots. So what we did, we proposed 5 parking spaces perpendicular straight from the alley. And with that said, the backyard that we have, we are proposing an additional 3 parking spaces that will be available as tandem parking. And the reason we're not doubling from 5 to 10, giving the tandem solution, is we're trying to maintain a certain portion of that space for trash, for our trash enclosure. Because we're talking with a couple of private companies for trash pickup as well for all 3 properties together. This is basically for the site overall. As far as the building architecture, the building is 3 stories, and we are keeping the first 2 floors facing I'm talking facing Columbia Road. The first 2 stories would be of brick. We're trying to maintain a traditional look. Of course, we're repeating the double hung windows that is very common on this block. And the 3rd floor, we are actually sloping back and with the roof covered with asphalt shingles, and of course a dormer coming out of that 3rd floor. So this way we're keeping the building lines pretty much intact, and that's why we had to break the 3 stories by by the finishes, brick for 2 stories only, and the 3rd floor is sloping backwards. The massing of the building is basically an L-shaped building. We incorporate like a sleeve side yard in the back just to get more windows in order to have more bedrooms, of course, for the units. Again, there are a total of 3 units, 3 bedroom, 3 bath each. I can talk a lot about the floor plans, but I don't want to take more of your time. All the floor plans are in detail in the package that has been passed out. And so I want to point that out, that the reason we have new packages handed out today, simply because we met with one of the neighbors recently, like literally 2 days ago, and he asked us to review one architectural element. So we incorporated that revision, and that's the only reason we have a revised package in your hands today. Otherwise, everything else matches the previous package that was provided a while back. I just have only 2-3 items, and I'll go. Then I would like to step into we'll also perform the shade and shadow study before and after, before the new development and after. And the building being facing south, you don't see any impact on the shade and shadow study. It's usually we have impacts when the building is facing east and west. That's when the real impact comes in. Building is facing south, we don't have a shade and shadow study on any neighboring properties. We only have one adjoining neighbor, considering the 3 lots. And my client have met multiple times with that adjoining neighbor, and they presented the project, and actually that adjoining neighbor supports the project, and he did provide us with a letter of support. And 2 days ago, we met with another neighbor from across the street that happens to be an architect, him and his wife, that is also in support of the project, and he requested only for that small revision on that facade, dropping that 3rd floor, incorporating like a dormer instead of having a 3rd floor continuing up, which I think was a very constructive comment, and we immediately incorporated that with the design. And again, I want to conclude by saying the project does meet all 10 points, especially the exemption requirements, and we are here today hoping for your support for our application to the BZA. If there's any questions, I'll be here to respond and clarify.
Start with Commissioner Frost.
Just for a point of clarity, for special exception 336.5, there should be a minimum of 900 square feet of land area per dwelling unit. Don't your project exceed that requirement?
Of course. Those 2 lots that we're proposing, 3 units each, they're over the 2,700 square feet in lot area.
Is there any way your project can be built and come down to the minimum lot area requirement?
We are meeting that. We are over 2,700 square feet. We're not seeking any lot.
Oh, no, my bad.
Yeah, 2 of the lots were 2,700, and the 3rd lot is 1972.
I misinterpreted on my part.
I have a question for clarity. I added the color rendering. I'm presuming it's close to what you intend to do, but I don't know if it's just illustrative or if it's actually, I mean, are you going to use faux slate or slate-like material for the roof shingles or asphalt shingles?
We're going with asphalt shingles, but we're open. If there's any material proposed, we're open to that.
And then I noticed that the second level bay is a different color brick. It is still brick, right?
Correct. It's all brick. We just use two different.
Changing the color.
Yeah, because it's the repetition that we have on 3 different lots. That's why we don't want to carry that red brick throughout. So that's why we thought we can just differentiate with the material, with the color only.
One question I have, and I will agree, I'm a little sad that the tree's going, but considering how close it is to the structure and what you're doing to the yard, I get it. Is there any opportunity to maybe put a tree closer to the sidewalk? I know it's a very steep hill, and this is very much at the top, and bringing it down. The reason I ask is because that's another one of our many area streets where there's no tree boxes, there's no place for creating a public space. I'm just wondering if you can help make the sidewalks a little friendlier to walkers.
That's music to my clients here. She's also a big supporter of that, and we'll definitely incorporate that.
Okay.
I'm not entirely convinced that the trees have to go away that either.
Okay.
There's a way to work around it.
Well, all I have to say right now is I love you. If that's okay.
Definitely.
The other thing I'll make is a general comment that generally what I'm concerned with a lot of these conversions is that they don't seem to be compatible with the surrounding community. And it's really hard to have something that's compatible with doing one structure at a time. The fact that you're doing 3 structures, even if it doesn't match everything around it, it actually seems more of the neighborhood because it looks like it's an intentional chunk of the neighborhood. So I appreciate that there's some rhythm, there's some sameness, because they're row houses after all, and they should look like they're part of a row. So the fact that there's actually 3 here instead of 1, I think actually makes it a stronger project.
Yeah, actually, that's why my client made me to hold on working on that project up until they acquired the other 2 projects. They started with the vacant lot, and they made us wait up until they acquired the other 2 lots.
And then I guess my final question before I stop monologuing here is kind of for Commissioner Brown or for you. You mentioned you had a letter of support from the adjoining neighbor and you talked to the architect across the street. Beyond that, what's the general feeling from the residents of Columbia Road?
I think Commissioner Brown also tried to reach out to a couple, and the only people that attended is where we had the chance to talk with, other than my client knocking the door of the next door neighbor and talking to me.
I reached out to some of the members of the community personally and received some feedback. And for those who weren't able to speak with the developers directly, I passed on some of their recommendations, which they were, the plans were, and the proposal was modified to accommodate those residents.
So in good old days, the BZA required, they were required to notify all residents within 200 yards of any.
That's still, it's still there.
I mean, no,
We notified every neighborhood in your
notified.
Yeah, I'll go do Commissioner Nguyen. Are there any other commissioners down here? If not, we'll do Commissioner Nguyen, then Mr. Nelson.
I want to just make sure I understand. So you own 3 properties, 751, 753, and 755. 2 of those properties are single-family home structures, and 1 is raised. And tonight,
The third one is a vacant lot.
one is a vacant lot, I'm sorry, and 2 are single-family structures. The 2 single-family structures, you're asking for a variance to create 3 units. I'm sorry,
Special
exception to create 3 units each.
Correct.
And then for the third properties, 751 is just a single family that you'll be building on it?
No, we're doing a 2-unit by right.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Every one of those properties is a 2-unit by right. They're seeking 1 additional unit on each of the houses.
Okay.
Because, again, this also falls before the ruling in June 26th of last year, when you were able to do 1 unit per 900 square feet. So that's why the vacant lot is at 1,800 square feet, and it doesn't have an existing structure on it. So by right, you can't do more than 2 units. On the properties that does have a single family structure on it, an existing structure, and is at 2,700 square feet, which can give you 3 units at that lot, which is 2,700 divided by 3 is 900 square feet. The answer to your question is because those properties were acquired and purchased based upon the previous zoning regulations and before any changes happened. Correct, but the law is still allowing us to do that if we meet the 10 points of Section 52. Because the law allowing me to. I'm not asking for a variance. I'm asking what is the law allowing me to do, that I can still get by law the 3 units with a special exemption as long as I meet.
Well, but Patrick, that's their problem. They have to explain that to the BZA. Yeah. I know, but I'm trying to save us some time and use some frustration. I appreciate your efforts, but the burden of proof is on the applicant. So I appreciate that you're bringing it up. It is something you'll want to look into, make sure you have the strongest argument possible when you go in. So with that, are there any, Commissioner Nguyen?
Are these for sale units, or are you living there?
I am seriously considering doing one for myself and my family. It's just it's a budget. We'll see if we can actually afford it. But otherwise, they are still they're not that they will be sold.
Where are you condo?
Yes.
What price points?
Commissioner, your question is asking.
First one, I think that in the green, the ones where we have green, the basement level is going to be a 1 level, 1,600 square foot apartment. I expect it to be around 600, maybe somewhere between 550 and 650. This is the year which I remember approximately. The other unit is going to be 1.5 levels, but the 2,000 square feet, so I'm kind of budgeting for maybe 800 plus each. But that's one, but we'll see what happens.
Sure, Patrick, it's a quick question, because it's hot in here.
Well, if these are going to be condos, then you're going to have special trash pickup, not city pickup.
Of course.
Where are you planning on putting garbage?
I explained that earlier, that we're providing, we can double up the parking from 5 to 10, but we're already going from 5 to 8 and keeping a space of almost 2 parking spaces to put a trash enclosure.
How would you trash up and get into that alley when the alley is not justified for government trash?
It's a private pickup company. The same way the cars are accessing the back alleys and parking in the back.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. We're going to move on. Commissioner Brown, is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to support BZA case number 19-235 for the special exception for 753 Columbia.
I'll second it. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes.
Thank you so much. Good night. We did do both together, right?
Yeah, we kind of talked about it together, but, so that was on 236, okay?
And I I'd like to make a motion to support BZA case number 19236 for a special exception for 755 Columbia Road.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? In that case passes unanimously as well. And now we can get to the last item on the agenda.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your patience. 19237, 3700 14th Street, Commissioner Goldschmidt.
Excuse me. I'm also the architect for 3700 14th Street, and I was under the impression that there was a community meeting, so I wasn't expecting us to be on the agenda, but I'm here to answer any questions that you may need also on that project.
Well, I'll let you address that.
So I spoke with Mr. Sullivan and the developer. I understood that one of them was here. No?
I just saw it on your agenda, so, but I'll be more than happy to respond to anything.
I will elaborate on that. Matt Sullivan, he submitted a letter to the BZA because he wants to postpone his current hearing date and move it back so he could do a community meeting to get input on his project. That's something he did, I guess, on his own behalf.
Gotcha.
And I just wanted to make that clarity to the commission. That's why I sent the commission the letter of postponement so y'all can understand that.
We had a conversation about the postponement.
Yes.
No.
I can give a brief if you want.
Yeah, so I guess, so I spoke with Mr. Sullivan and I spoke with the developer, and I guess that, maybe you could just explain why you guys moved there.
Correct. The current property is a corner lot located at 3700 14th Street, and right now there is a basement and a first floor restaurant. It's a restaurant use at this point, and it is in the C2A zone. Given the density that we can put on that property, we're proposing 4 stories over the existing structure. Since we can, by the C2A, we can go up to 50 feet. The four units, residential units that we're proposing would require 2 parking spaces per the zoning regulations. As of right now, there is actually a parking pads in the back that we utilize as 2 parking spaces. However, they are not legal parking spaces, simply because there's a 15-foot wide BRL, building restriction line, that cuts the building in diagonal and makes the buildable portion as a small triangular footprint. And in order to get to the buildable portion, it's not accessible because that BRL cuts the building from the side and eats up all the way to the alley. So we couldn't access the building from the back. We met with the zoning administrator and we proposed and provided documentation that there is parking on the lot over the BRL today. Unfortunately, he didn't accept our request of grandfathering the parking because simply is sitting on a BRL makes it a non-compliant parking space. So that's why we were forced to go to the BZA and request a variance for parking. We're not really the building, we're keeping. Well, I don't know, it was not necessarily. Because if you look at the site plan, you won't be able to get to that buildable area without crossing that BRL. And this is the challenging part. If there was a way that we were allowed to get into the building portion and put garage, we could have done that. But it wasn't even practical to get that. We also seek putting parking in the building to make that work, and it wasn't practical.
And you guys intend to dig out the basement of the Carolina house, is that right?
We are...
There's like a tiny storage space.
Correct.
Yeah.
We're proposing to drop the slab and make that full floor in the basement as storages and additional use for the restaurant. And we're opening up the whole first floor as dining and bar space for that restaurant. Sorry? Sorry? Yes, the restaurant is staying, and we're building the 4 units on top of the restaurant.
So you're not planning on expanding?
Of course. No.
Well,
I don't know if it's functioning.
Well, let me ask you, will the restaurant have to close during construction?
I don't think it's operating.
It's not operating? Okay.
So you're not planning on expanding the fence?
We cannot expand, we can't, because the BRL is actually sits on the face of the existing structure.
So with that grassy area,
Yeah, that's not touched. It's gonna stay there. It's gonna stay green. The existing building footprint is not changing.
Building restriction line.
Because the building restriction line won't let you build.
Correct.
And moving those things enacted through council.
We're staying within the the current building footprint. We're not adding to it. We're not putting any additions to it.
And then these might be questions for the developer, but you intend to keep the kitchen where it is in the...
No, we are relocating the kitchen to the basement. That's why we are raising the roof, dropping the slab to get more head clearance and incorporate all the hoods and exhaust and all that.
And the developer intends to keep the restaurant and sell before you enter the building?
Correct.
I'm going to ask.
I'm sorry, did you mean that the owner, the developer would want to keep and operate the restaurant? No.
Oh, well, but the owner of the restaurant.
I don't know if he wants to own it or not. I don't know if he's like in the business of running the restaurant. I don't know, he might keep the original tenant that was there. I don't know if there was any communication with them. But, you know, I know the investor was partnered with I think, developer that spoke with you that, you know, might, you know, have somebody to take it over.
My primary question is there enough here to vote on tonight, or are we just getting information? Well, but when does this go before the BZA?
I think it's also April 18th.
April
19th.
19th, so that's after our next meeting. So we don't have to do it tonight. What's the purpose for the community meeting? Is this a hardship for the owner because people have questions, or are there new information that the community needs to hear?
Hi, my name is Alex Garcia with Sullivan & Barrows. I'm Marty Sullivan's associate. So ANC 4C wanted us to have a community meeting because it's within ANC 4C's jurisdiction, so that's going to push back the hearing until after their meeting as well. We hadn't been in front of their community and they wanted to ask questions. There's no new information.
Well, I mean, just to be clear, because it's on the border in our jurisdiction too.
Oh, I apologize. Sorry.
Just saying. Well, I'd like to hear from commissioners if they feel strongly that we should weigh in on this tonight, or if this wasn't enough information. I mean, I was personally, since we're here, do it. But I don't want to force anyone to vote on something they don't feel that they're prepared to vote on.
This was sort of the waiting room. The plan was to get this done, and I don't think that any of my constituents will attend the community meeting. And I do think that this is a by right